Got it. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 9th, 2020 Hermosa Beach City School Board meeting. There was no closed session tonight, so there's nothing to report out. Michelle, would you mind doing the roll, please?
Yes. Board Member Maggie Bovilla-Monica.
Present.
Board Member Douglas Gardner.
Present.
Board Member Barbara Zondiros.
Here. Sorry. Here.
Thank you. Board Clerk Stephen McCall.
Present.
Board President Jennifer Cole.
Present.
All present.
If everyone can rise and join us for the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll work on our full screen flag presentation the next time. All right, so let me just read the modified meeting procedures during COVID-19. As an attempt to control the spread of coronavirus and to reduce and minimize the risk of infection, Governor Newsom issued Executive Orders N-25-20 on March 12, 2020, and N-29-20 on March 17, 2020, waiving certain Brown Act requirements around teleconferencing and public participation at board meetings. Under the new executive orders, board members may participate in board meetings via teleconference without geographical or posting restrictions, while requiring the board to make the public meeting accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public to observe and address the board. During the existence of these executive orders, the board is not required to have a location for the public to be physically present to observe the board meetings or to address the board. HBCSD is doing its part to help the efforts to reduce the spread of coronavirus by encouraging members of the public to watch the Board of Education meetings live on Time Warner Cable Channel 8 and on Frontier Channel 31, and live online video streaming at the link provided, which I think it is also now tonight live on our Facebook Live, and we are doing a Zoom meeting. So with that, we will move on tonight to an approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Stephen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Barb. All in favor? Michelle, can you do the roll call?
Board Member Maggie Bovilla-Monica.
Aye.
Board Member Douglas Gardner.
Aye.
Board Member Barbara Zondiros.
Aye.
Board Clerk Stephen McCall.
Aye.
Board President Jennifer Cole.
Aye.
All in favor, and the agenda is approved.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Just a quick announcement on my side. I'd like to take this time just to welcome everyone in the Hermosa Beach community back to school. We appreciate all the students and the parents and their resilience. I've heard that word time and time again this week and the last week. And also thank you to the staff for all your hard work preparing for the beginning of this, what we all know is an unprecedented start of the school year. Thank you to PTO and HBEF for making the start of the school year feel special. I think we are going to do our very best in this uncharted territory, and we'll continue to share to the public from the classrooms all the fantastic things our teachers are preparing and all the great things our students are learning and accomplishing. And if you're a parent at home and are struggling, we want to encourage you to please reach out to the district, and we will do our very best to support you. We know that it is a hard time juggling both pretty much everything in life right now, being a parent, working, the heat, the smoke, financial stress, and just the stress of day-to-day life. And we just want you to know you are not walking this road alone. We are here with you, and the district is here with you. And continue to reach out to us with your feedback, both if you have positive feedback, that's always nice to share with everyone, but also if you have concerns or questions, or you just think something could be improved. I think we've been doing a very good job of responding to feedback and getting back to people really timely. So I feel like the communication lines are very open and receptive at this juncture of the school year, especially. And then you're going to hear a lot this year in terms of the school year about the budget and all the implications based off of what we're dealing with the fallout of COVID-19 in terms of the financial stress to the district, especially with us being the lowest funded school district in LA County and the 5th lowest in the state. We're going to have to continue to be amazing and creative problem solvers and wearers of lots of hats in our small district. So I just want to give a shout out again to the district staff for being what I would consider magicians, and for HBEF and the community that are really supporting the district every chance that you can. So we just want you to know we notice it, it's very appreciated, and we know it's hard work. So thank you very much. And now we will move on to announcements. I just have one announcement, and in terms of tonight we're going to be discussing this equity resolution, and I wanted to thank the group Pop the Bubble for being willing to include Hermosa Beach Schools in their book fundraiser for inclusive classroom books that they're planning on distributing to our schools and a few other schools districts within the South Bay. This is a targeted group of South Bay families that is doing some really great work, and their books selected by Common Sense Media, and they're ordering them through pages. So I just will post more information about this on my social channels, but I just wanted to make that announcement and thank them as well. So we will move on now to communications, and we'll have oral communications from the audience to the board. And I will read the communication procedures during COVID-19. Public comment may be submitted online only. Public comments must be received at least 1 hour prior to the start of the school board meeting by 4 p.m. Comments are limited to approximately 400 words or a 3-minute equivalent. If members of the public would like to contact the Board of Education about this agenda, please do so by emailing mmoraz@hbcsd.org with public comment in the subject line, or use our online form at the link provided. Any public comment will be shared with the board members and will be read aloud during the meeting public comment period. So oral communications from the audience to the board. Members of the audience may address the board on any topic regardless of whether it is listed on the agenda. However, the board may not discuss issues raised that are not listed on the agenda. Topics not on the agenda that are brought to the board's attention may be investigated by the administration and a report made to the board either publicly or privately at a future meeting. Complaints regarding district employees must be dealt in a closed session, not in public. Comments from visitors shall not exceed 3 minutes unless waived by a majority of all members of the board. And at this point, do we have any oral communications from the audience to the board that anyone wants to share? Maggie?
The oral communications, aren't those what we received submitted from Michelle earlier today?
Yes, but I don't know if they're considered written or oral. So I'm happy to read them because we only received that comment. But did anybody receive any other comments? I don't think so.
I've received other written communications since then, but I think this session right now is for communications to the full board at the start of the board meeting.
Yeah, yes, that's accurate.
So should I read the comments from the?
So if it's for the LCP, then that will be the public hearing. If it's the other comment for the equity task force, then that should be read. Can I get just a clarification on that, Michelle?
I think those comments could be read now, or when we come to the equity resolution portion, it might be more appropriate at that time.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So, okay, great. Thank you, Michelle, for that clarity. So we'll move on then to written communications. Do we have any written communications? Maggie, I'll let you start.
Yes, I received 2 communications regarding the equity resolution and another email regarding budget and enrollment.
Great, thank you so much. Stephen?
No written communications. Thanks.
Doug?
Yeah, I had a few written communications. I had one about the I think everybody was on all of these, the distance learning stipends, one about the full distance learning plans, one about the STAR education daycare, and that was it.
Thank you, Doug. Barb?
And just the one about the STAR education program.
Right, thank you. I received that one as well. I also received written communications from Lisa Bennett, Adam Hobbs, Tara Owens, Casey Cosgrave, and Carol Resnick. I think I'm saying that correctly. Hold on one second, please. Hey, Glenn and Carter. Thank you. All right, so next we'll move on to superintendent update.
Thank you, President Cole. So first off, I'd like to begin just to acknowledge that this week on Friday is 9/11, and just to acknowledge first responders. Obviously, first responders and especially medical have been on the front lines during COVID, but it's just a good opportunity to acknowledge them. Hermosa Beach celebrates them with a memorial on the Greenbelt. So just taking a moment to just reflect back about 9/11 for those of us that experienced it, and also for our students who may have not experienced it as well too. It's an important thing to consider. Next, just a big thanks to everyone involved, and I do mean everyone, parents, staff, the Board of Education, for getting our first week of school off and running. Successful so far, a few bumps, but definitely we're very, very excited about the start of school and happy to be in the thick of it. We have ongoing professional development that took place in the 3 days prior to school. So again, thanks to the Board of Education for approving the additional day. And then I have been on sites with our principals, and we've seen a lot of staff also coming to site. So I see full parking lots when I'm at View and at Valley. And then I just want to give a big shout out to the family support. Our parents have been gangbusters. I've heard from many teachers about how supportive parents have been and helping their students during the course of the day. So just a big appreciation for that. Next, just like to thank HBF. This school year does not start without the Hermosa Beach Education Foundation. So our budget does not go without you. So thank you for HBF leadership, as well as to our families who donate. Chromebooks. So we have 140 students, 140 registered devices for our bring your own device policy. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. So 140 students registered for our BY Bring Your Own Device policy. We have 90 home devices that are registered under the Securely that are not our own devices. And then we have 699 devices that were checked out through HBCSD. And our as far as I just want to give also a big thank you to PTO, who did a phenomenal job with the distribution of the devices. Again, we 699 devices distributed, and that was by our parent-teacher volunteers. So thank you to our parents who volunteered. Also got an opportunity to visit the distribution as well too. A lot of good humor in the distribution process, so that was a lot of fun. Our attendance, attendance this year is measured in a different way. It's through a mark at the beginning of the day, as well as engagement. So we have a different way of reporting to the state. So in our first week up until today, views, ADA has been 97.7% and Valleys was 99.5%, which as the board is familiar with ADA, that's pretty strong attendance. So again, I just want to give a big shout out to our teachers and our parents, because they're the ones that really made that attendance happen in that first week of school. So thank you to all. Then I just want to take an opportunity to just real quickly talk about special education and in-person services. So the county County Department of Health has provided guidance that we can now provide in-person cohort support. So there are a lot of restrictions around this so for example, you can only have 12 people in a cohort plus 2 supervising adults. Our priority is to our special day families. We believe if there's any group of students that we need to get back on campus first, it would be students that participate in our special day program. With the restrictions that are in place, it definitely creates a quagmire for us because of the number of adults that work in a special day program that are instructional aides and one-on-ones. So I've reached out personally to Dr. Ferrer on multiple occasions, and as well as brought it up to Dr. Duardo, that the current LA Department of Health guidance, which I believe is intended to actually provide support to our most vulnerable students, by the very nature of the restrictions, inhibits students with the most severe disabilities from being able to participate in a cohort because of their staffing needs. So we're hoping to get flexibility. Already the state has revised their guidelines and provided for 2 additional staff members or 2 additional people within a cohort. So I'm hoping that LA Department of Health will do something similar or the same, so we can provide in-person services to our students with the most needs. And then I'll just piggyback on President Cole just to make mention of Pop the Bubble, and just to quickly explain that Pop the Bubble is doing a fundraiser for books that are about that include inclusivity and diversity. So many classrooms have we call classroom libraries, and in many cases they're based off of donations or what teachers find or what the school purchases for teachers, sometimes usually when they first start. But it's a wide collection of books that could be in a classroom library. Pop the Bubble, their leadership is composed of educators, and so I very much support their effort because they get it and they know that those classroom libraries can be very eclectic and just based off of what teachers have at their disposal. So this fundraiser support the purchase of books for classroom libraries that represent diversity and inclusivity. And then just to donate, it's popthebubble2020.com. So please go to that URL and donate what you can. And then just to make mention that we are in the process of rolling out our social emotional learning plan. Our theme this year is connecting together apart. Our new counselor should be starting by next week, and that counselor will be at Valley. We're just in the final phases of hiring, so we hope to have that approved and that person to be on their way to starting later next week. And then we're working off of the CASEL framework. So that's the California standards for social emotional learning. And our focus for trimester 1 will be relationship skills. And really our goals for trimester 1 is to create clear pathways whereby parents, students, and teachers can access counselor support virtually. We're creating online resources. We already have up on our distance learning website a virtual calming room, which we plan to use as a resource for our students. We will be creating a community newsletter or tips and tricks for social emotional learning, and then we'll be providing professional development to our staff in relationship mapping and then trauma-informed care. Our biggest piece is to really provide group counseling for those students in need virtually during distance learning and beyond. And at our next board meeting, Ted Scott will be presenting more about our social emotional learning plan. And then finally for IT issues, so just to put it out there that with distance learning, as something for the public and the board to understand, there really has to be an appreciation that our IT departments, not just in this district, but across all districts, are really being asked to do the impossible. IT infrastructure at schools was never intended to provide distance learning. And it is not as simple as the flip of a switch where it's like, okay, you can just crank out distance learning. You know, much of our network and our infrastructure, and again, I've found this to be true in other districts as well too, are really struggling to handle the load of distance learning. I mean, like where effectively an entire school district is doing their learning online. We have a very talented IT coordinator, Simon Darren, who has really lifted heaven and earth to have such a smooth start to the school year. And let me tell you, because you know we went 2 weeks later than everyone else, it has been a smooth start to the school year when it comes to technology infrastructure. If you look in comparison to what other school districts had to experience, and we were able to learn from either mistakes or just happenstance that's happened to other school districts. So just a big shout out to him. We recognize that the SSO, the single sign-on, had some hitches, and that was due to that. It's just when you try to marry multiple systems, schools PLP, the single sign-on, securely, all these systems being married together. Yes, in theory, they work with each other, but in practice, when you actually do it, that is a different story. And there's just some things that have to be worked out. You mean like as they are being rolled out. So thank you for everyone's patience in working with us on this. Parents were very, very helpful in working case by case with our front office staffs. But that issue, as of now, is resolved. I am sure there will be more down the road. But on that note, we've opened up an email, which is our help desk. It's ithelp@hbcsd.org. If you're in need of tech support, you can send an email to that address, and our techs or our staff will reach out to you. And then we're actually in the process of reconfiguring how we provide tech support during distance learning to provide quicker response times, as well as to make sure that like our infrastructure is providing things like such as FAQs where parents can seek their own help, you mean like immediately, versus having to wait for someone to respond or having to call a line. So that is my superintendent report. And does anyone have any questions?
Go around the horn. Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I second all the thanks. It's been incredible. And I'm just wondering about the next steps. Obviously, we're sort of, on some level, teachers are easing in, students, parents, we're all sort of easing in and getting on board with schools, PLP, etc. I'm just curious, the next steps, the next couple of weeks, or you know, will there be, I know we've still got our committee meeting, and I'm just wondering if there will be opportunity for feedback or input from parent, you know, things that are going well, things that may want to look at or consider moving forwards. I just wonder what the administration is considering in terms of, you know, we've come back, we've hit the ground strong, we've come out swinging, to use your words, and it's great, but sort of how do we maybe think about, how are we thinking about optimizing as we move forwards?
Yeah, so I believe that you're referencing feedback. So the reopening committee is actually meeting on Friday, and we've outlined 6 different areas in relation to distance learning to hear feedback and to draw up potential next steps, and either whether it be collecting feedback or making improvements on our current platforms. So that's effectively our next step for Friday. And then, of course, you know, people have been sending us emails. Our site principals have received a lot of feedback, and the admin task force meets twice a week, really. We meet as principals and we meet as a leadership team in order to review that feedback and to make adjustments moving forward. And that includes from our staff as well, too. And then we're meeting with the Hermosa Beach Educators Association. I meet with them every 2 weeks. And then our site principals are meeting with their grade level leads on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Yep.
Doug, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you. And I third all of the thanks to everyone as well.
Barb?
I do have, well, maybe a comment or question. I don't know which one, but Jason, I think you would know. I have been told that we have to test our students in the next 2 weeks, give them some state standardized tests in math and English in order to determine if they've lost learning. The irony is we have to give up a week of instruction when we're just getting into the swing of things in order to give these tests. And I believe that's a statewide thing, and I assume that that's coming down the line for our teachers as well.
I'm not aware of a timeline in regard to the next 2 weeks, but as part of the learning continuity plan, like we do need to have our students participate in diagnostic in order to assess learning loss. That may be in alignment with a school district's plan to roll out a diagnostic during a certain period of time, but each district's plan may differ in that. We have purchased iReady, which is a online diagnostic and intervention system. But we're still in the beginning stages of rollout for our students and for our teachers. So they wouldn't take place within the next 2 weeks. I also think too that, as the summer slide, now times 10, that, probably like late September, early October is going to be when you're going to see like a fair diagnostic of student performance.
Aggie, you have any questions?
No question. Thank you.
Thanks. Jason, I did have one question, and I'm sure many people have been asking, just, not really understanding how to read the tea leaves on when we potentially could return to school. And I'm not sure what answer to give people sometimes. I have hopeful answers, but I'm not sure if you're hearing other things that we're not hearing.
Yes and no. So right now, like that conversation, I wouldn't say it's gone dark, but like each week, it's been kind of the same information from the LA Department of Health and LACO. So the governor recently came out with a new set of criteria in order to move towards a reopening for schools or it basically encompasses any sector, and you need to remain within that tier, the below tier for 21 days, and that's when you come off the watch list. I'm not going to cut to the chase on it. It effectively makes the wait longer. And as far as like timeline for return, our briefing is tomorrow morning for what is the latest last week. The latest was that, it could be anywhere from late September to early October, but I don't want to say no one really knows, but there was a lot of talk about what was going to happen over Labor Day, and if there's kind of this expected increase coming from the Labor Day weekend, probably not as severe as Memorial Day weekend or the 4th of July, but that is an anticipation. So they also, some may wonder like what the criteria has changed, but it hasn't really changed that dramatically. That it used to be based off a 14-day average, so that's why you saw 100 out of 100,000. Now it's based off of a daily average, so that's why you see like that difference in number. And it basically, as they explain it, it basically calculates to be almost the same, but it's the state is now calculating off of a daily average as opposed to the 14-day average. There's been no date that's been put out, and as of right now, we're still above the threshold. And as far as waivers go, at this time, LA Department of Health is still not accepting waivers for the elementary level, and that's grades TK5. So that's kind of where things stand right now as far as the process. And I still hold to that. And communicating with local districts, it is very much like a wait and see approach, and being cautious about when you pivot. I heard someone say something, a leader said something the other day that I think is very true, which is a school district shouldn't open to close within the same month. That would be very jarring for the educational process, considering too that there's a lot of logistics that go into reopening, as well as running what is effectively, 3 models at once: full distance learning, hybrid learning, and then distance learning when you're not participating in the cohort for the hybrid. I've seen a lot of funny YouTube videos trying to explain that as well too. I recommend them if you haven't seen them.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you for that information that's not as clear. It's still not cleared. No one is clear on it. And I'm not saying you, but I'm saying, the bigger picture. All right, tonight we're gonna move on to board reports, and we'll do our, actually, there's no board reports enlisted down here tonight. So unless somebody has one that is not on the agenda of a meeting we have been to, and I don't think we all have, so since we've last talked. All right, so we'll move on to the public hearing, which is H-01-20/21, the hearing on learning continuity and attendance plan. Dr. Johnson and Ms. Gluck.
Thank you, President Cole. So Michelle, can you go ahead and, thank you. She's always 5 steps ahead of me. Look how nice that looks. Someone let us know if it's blurry. We put a lot into making sure that it's not. Okay, so thank you again, board. And this is the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. A little background here. The purpose of the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, also known as the LCP, is a replacement of the Local Control Accountability Plan. The Local Control Accountability Plan is a 3-year plan that is updated annually that school districts utilize in order to report to the county and then ultimately to the state of how they're spending their monies in the 8 criteria areas that the school district has laid out. The LCP is an emergency plan. I'm hearing that it's very clear on Facebook Live, so thank you for that, community. So the LCP is an emergency plan that is replacing the LCAP as a temporary stopgap 1-year measure, and it is a explanation of the school district's emergency plan during COVID in order to deal with learning continuity, learning loss, and attendance. So school districts are required to complete these plans, but as we've mentioned before in the primary, the timeline is much shorter. So typically an LCAP is written over the course of a year, whereas the learning continuity plan, or the LCP, it was released on August 1st, and it has to be board approved by by September 30th. So the purpose of this meeting is a public hearing in order to review the plan. The plan is available in its entirety. It's very long. I think it's over 40 pages. And we're going to provide a summary to the Board of Education and an opportunity for feedback or comments. And we will take those comments and feedback in order to incorporate them into the plan. And there will also be time for public comment as a public hearing virtually. Okay, so Michelle, can you do slide? So again, just to review, this is the purpose. It's the replacement of the LCAP, and it's also an opportunity to memorialize planning that really began back in July 1st with the beginning of our reopening task force. And this is something that all school districts in California must complete. It's not just a specific HRMS item. Slide. So here's our timeline. This just gives the board an idea of where we've come from and where we're going. Just to skip down to today's meeting, on August 26th, the reopening committee had an opportunity to review the plan and provided feedback and input. And then we took that feedback and input and incorporated it and created a draft to present to the board today. today is an opportunity for a public hearing, and then on September 30th, there would be an adoption. We have a period of time to submit the LCAP, or sorry, the LCP to LACO. Sorry, I realized they actually changed the title of it to LCP from LCAP just the other day, so it's the LCP now. The board, so LACO will submit feedback to us, and then the board needs to consider those recommendations and then approve them moving forward. What we went ahead and did is we actually submitted, because Ms. Gluck and I finished our LCP earlier, we went ahead and we submitted our pre-draft to LACO early in order to receive feedback early to better support the board in the approval process. So we're hoping that the draft that the board approves on September 30th will be a draft that's already actually been reviewed by LACO, so we don't have this process of it being kicked back to us. That's something that a benefit of completing the LCP early is it gives us a jump to get feedback earlier from LACO as well. Slide. So the LCP has many different areas as far as where it should, where all the places that your plan for this year should address. Keep in mind, again, it is an emergency plan, and it's written to be as a one-year measure. The school districts have received one-time funds, such as CARES Act monies, that must be spent within this school year. So the plan reflects that. So it shouldn't really be viewed as a long-term plan. It should really be viewed as an annual plan. These are all the different areas that are covered within the LCP, and this just gives you an overview, and we'll be covering these areas in summary one by one with our presentation. Slide. So the first area is to describe our stakeholder engagement and how the district went about creating an LCP with stakeholders. So we highlighted areas such as our Reopening Schools and Learning Continuity Advisory Committee, which is continuing to meet. We met on a weekly basis beginning in July and continued those meetings ongoing, and so we're meeting again on Friday. We also conducted surveys and had a high volume of responses, and then we accumulated that data and presented it to the board and to the community, and then incorporated that feedback into our LCP and our opening plan. Conducted a town hall and a Q&A presentation, again, as an opportunity to either hear feedback from the community or present and engage our stakeholders. We conducted meetings on a weekly basis with HBA, which I do think proved very beneficial to both parties. And that was also an opportunity for the Educators Association to provide feedback to our reopening plan. And it was also an opportunity for us to engage prior to negotiations. We did successfully complete our negotiations for a memorandum of understanding, also known as an MOU. And that was in collaboration for the reopening as well. And then as we've actually conducted a significant number of board meetings, especially special sessions outside of our regular schedule, in order to meet the various needs and requirements in planning for a reopening. Slide. So this is, the plan asks us to highlight areas where stakeholders had influence or informed places of our plan. So just to highlight a few examples, our stakeholders, it was expressed last year by parents and staff that, for example, that Chromebooks being distributed en masse would be essential to running distance learning. So we created the Chromebook stabilization plan in response to that feedback. Childcare was another area where we had almost 300 respondents say that they were in need of childcare. So the district attempted to facilitate childcare with the city as well as Star Daycare. Another piece of feedback that was the most common was about schedule design and the need for more synchronous learning, and that was communicated by staff and by the parent community. So what we attempt to do is, again, it's one thing to gather stakeholder feedback, but stakeholder feedback for the admin task force was really essential in order to shape our reopening plan. And those are just a few highlights of where stakeholders had impact on the plan itself. Slide.
Okay, good evening. So this section requires a description of the actions the district will take to offer classroom-based instruction whenever possible, particularly for students who have experienced significant learning loss due to the school closures of 2019-2020 year, or greater risk of experienced learning loss due to current school closures. The district has created a hybrid learning plan when students are able to return to school safely in accordance with the LA County Department of Public Health. The hybrid model is designed to seamlessly transition students back to campus when it is safe to return in person. The hybrid model blends face-to-face instruction 2 to 3 days a week with enhanced distant learning experience on alternative days. This model will allow teachers to teach half their class in person and adhere to physical distancing requirements. In-class instruction will adhere to traditional and adopted curriculums, and on off days, students will participate with asynchronous instruction using school's PLP, or learning management system. Assessment will drive instruction. A focus will be on essential standards, which are outlined on our standards-based report card, and students will be supported with differentiated instruction. Intervention positions will support students at both sites, along with curriculum that has been purchased to address learning loss. It is our intention to bring back our students with special needs to provide designed instruction and service, or designated instruction and service. A designated English language coordinator will focus on providing support to our students who are developing with their English language skills. These students will use Imagine Learning, a dedicated online curriculum which will foster language development. Slide, please. Now we go on to our distance learning plan. The Hermosa Beach City School District will provide a continuity of instruction during the school year to ensure pupils have access to a full curriculum of substantially similar quality, regardless of the method of delivery. This section places an emphasis on how the district's plan for curriculum and instruction resources that will ensure instructional continuity for pupils if a transition between in-person instruction and distance learning is necessary. So based on COVID statistics and the governor's order, the district began the school year with full distance learning. School's PLP is a learning management system that we will be utilizing both for hybrid and distance learning. The platform combines an effective classroom management tool and a customizable learning management system with online curriculum. It is also customizable by our teachers. Chromebook stabilization, we've purchased 500 new Chromebooks, and we've implemented the BYOD program. And when it is safe to return to school campuses, students will be allowed to bring their own electronic devices, a Chromebook, a Chrome tablet, or mobile device to school. A memo of understanding between the Hermosa Beach Education Association and the district focused on creating standardized distance learning and hybrid schedules to ensure students were receiving synchronous and asynchronous instruction, along with office hours and opportunities for intervention and acceleration and social emotional learning. Slide, please. Professional development. So we're going to have another presentation today on professional development, but I'll go over the professional development on this plan. We will provide a robust professional development and resources that will be dedicated to our staff to support the distance learning program, including our technology support. We've hired 5 distance learning, hybrid learning consultant teachers who will serve as mentors to their grade level assigned within their cohorts. They will also provide professional development for staff during our dedicated Mondays. Schools PLP, to date, we've had 2 days prior to school training with all teachers. We've trained our instructional aides. We've trained our hybrid and distance learning teachers and mentors, and we've trained today just our special education professionals. Mondays will be dedicated weekly for professional development at the district level and school site level to cover any topics that are necessary to make sure our distance learning plan is excellent and that we continue to improve on what we're doing. And on top of it, we've had COVID trainings from ASKIP, which our teachers and our classified staff completed. We'll go more into those trainings when we do our professional development presentation. Slide, please.
So next, I'd like to talk about supports for pupils with unique needs. And this is also embedded in our plan in various subgroups that need to be supported during distance learning and or hybrid learning. The emergency distance learning plans is something for students with special needs. So each student will have a follow-up with their case manager in order to create an emergency distance learning plan that is separate from their individual education plan. The IEPs are based on brick and mortar school. That's the offer of free and appropriate education. However, an emergency distance learning plan is an informal plan that's put in place as an emergency stopgap measure to adapt that IEP plan to supporting students during distance learning. We actually successfully began in-person assessments this week, following all the safety protocols. Special thanks to our special education team for making it happen and putting all the protocols in place to get assessments rolling this week. And then we are looking to provide services in person, as I mentioned earlier, but we need to work within the LA Department of Health guidelines. In the first 2 weeks, we met with our special education team, and we are doing case management coordination in the first 2 weeks. So each case manager is working tirelessly to meet with each of their families in order to coordinate schedules, the emergency distance learning plan, as well as a service schedule so that our families can begin services within the first 2 weeks of school. And then our ELL coordinator is working with teachers and our English language learner students in order to provide designated services. And we are also utilizing online intervention systems for this as well. Sorry, I just want to make sure to Steve McCall get in. So then next, our new counselor that we'll be bringing on board at Valley, they will be tracking engagement, particularly for the subgroup of foster care and homeless. Those are relatively small populations in our school district, but our plan calls forth making sure that we're tracking their student engagement performance as well as their attendance. Slide. So the plan also calls for dedicated strategies for to address pupil learning loss and learning loss mitigation efforts. As you've seen in our schedule, we have dedicated synchronous schedules with instructional blocks. So our schedule is very standardized in order to make sure that there is continuity between learning, regardless of what teacher or grade level you're participating in. We've also purchased several intervention curriculums that are online programs, including Lexia and iReady. And then we'll also be using Sound Partners with our reading interventionists, which is a great program that can be done in small groups for phonemic awareness and phonics. We will be starting shortly with intervention coordinators at the middle school. And then we already have a designated reading interventionist teacher at the View Elementary. And then we're looking at tools, schools PLP and or an iReady as an assessment tool in order to perform that diagnostic that Barb had brought up earlier, as a ready-to-use assessment to start the year with a benchmark. But we're looking to do that a little bit later, just to make sure that it's an accurate assessment. And then we're also looking at the interim assessment blocks. These are provided by the CDE, or sorry, the California Department of Education, and they're basically benchmarks leading up to the California assessment for the CASP. And that's the standardized test that takes place at the end of the year for grades 3 to 11. So these will be tools that we use in order to continue to progress monitor learning loss, as well as providing intervention for our students. Slide. You can go ahead, Sylvia.
Okay. The district will monitor and support mental staff along with social and emotional well-being of pupils and staff during the school year, including the professional development and resources that will be provided to pupils and staff to address trauma and other impacts of the COVID-19 on the school community. We are in the process of finalizing our social emotional plan, Connecting Together Apart, which we'll be providing the board with a presentation next month. Classroom cohorts in elementary school, we rolled up our students in 1st through 5th grade, so they stayed within the same group of students, and they received a new teacher, and that provided some stability with the kids having some familiarity with their friends in their class and their classmates. We'll continue with family engagement. Our principals will continue to send out weekly emails, newsletters, and we will continue to support Beach Cities Health District in their workshops, and South Bay Families Connected will refer our families to for additional support. The district will be using the Employees Assistance Service for Education, which is called EASE, which provides confidential face-to-face counseling, phone consultations, and community referrals. It is good for our employees as well as immediate family members. And our 2 school counselors will really help in re-engaging students who may be disconnected, students who need Tier 1, Tier 2, as well as Tier 3 interventions. Slide. So in regards to pupil attendance and outreach, this area focuses on the procedures for tiered re-engagement strategies for pupils who are absent from distance learning, and how the district will provide outreach to pupils and their parents or guardians when pupils are not meeting the compulsory education requirements, or if the district determines students are not engaged in instruction and are at risk for learning loss. So the main focus will be on communication. We have various avenues that we will be using: newsletters, superintendent's message, surveys, virtual town halls, question and answers, social media, as well as any mailings that will come out from the district, just to go ahead and focus on attendance. Our Tier 1 will include our teachers, and that will be after 3 absences. The teachers will make an attempt to contact our families via phone, email, and if they're still missing sessions or unable to be contacted, we're going to document that and continue to follow up and move to a Tier 2 intervention, which will include school site support staff, which could include the principal or counselor, who will continue to reach that family and document all attempts. And our Tier 3 intervention would be at the district office. We'll have a team that will help to conduct home visits, attempt all phone numbers, contacts, or if necessary, refer the family for an SST or the school attendance review board, or a school attendance meeting to talk to the family about what's going on. We will continue our work with our reopening and advisory committee. They've been a great resource in providing feedback to the team. Parent workshops at the site level will help in the re-engagement process and to make parents aware of what the district is doing and how they can help their students. Our counselors will continue to work with our families as well as students and our teachers, and our equity task force is going to be implemented. slide, please. School nutrition. So Hermosa Beach City School District has partnered with Torrance Unified School District to provide nutritionally adequate meals for all pupils while in distance learning and hybrid learning. The district plans will make meals available to students that participate in the National School Lunch Program, as well as other students in the fall while we're under emergency orders. And the lunches will be available from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Hermosa Valley School only. And lunch will consist of a grab-and-go lunch, which parents can order online through Meal Magic the week prior and pick up at a drive-through valet at Valley School.
So as part of our plan, we need to demonstrate an increase in services for various subject groups, such as foster youth, English language learners, and low-income students. So these are a list of just some of the areas where we've demonstrated an increase in services, such as, for example, increasing our counseling support from 0.5 to 2.0 full-time employment, or the equivalent of 2 counselors. We also have an ELL coordinator designated for 0.2 of her school day in order to support, so that's a whole class period, designated to support our English language learner students. And then we've hired on 5 hybrid distance learning consult teachers who are providing professional development in areas such as social emotional learning or student engagement to support our teachers with distance learning and or hybrid. We are in the process, we've already designated a reading interventionist, but we're in the process of creating intervention coordinators positions at the middle school level. And then this board provided for the Chromebook stabilization plan in order to make sure that we had enough Chromebooks for all of our students, which we do on a center, like all students that have requested Chromebooks, we've been able to provide for, which we're very lucky and grateful to be able to do that for our community. Many school districts have not been able to. And then we also have made several purchases to digital curriculums, to schools PLP, and provided for a learning management system, again, trying to better support our high need learners by simplifying distance learning with a single sign-on, a one-stop shop, and a curriculum that's streamlined. Slide. So at this time, this is a public hearing, so we can take questions and considerations from the Board of Education. And then it is also a public hearing. So Michelle, are you on standby for public comment?
Right, I have not received any public comments on the hearing.
Okay. And then just for reference to, in the event that someone is unable to submit a comment or feedback this evening, they can always follow up and send myself or Ms. Gluck an email to follow up for comments or feedback about the LCP. So while we're taking time for public comment, this would be a good opportunity for the board also to provide feedback or ask questions.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. We'll start with Barb.
Couldn't find my unmute, sorry. I don't have any questions. I just want to make a comment how incredibly thorough the whole report is, and it's like you started from scratch just a couple months ago, and it's incredible, all the detail and all the consideration that was put into it to make sure that our kids are getting the best education under the circumstances they can, and the providing the families and the students with the social support and emotional support too. It's just incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, just to acknowledge that, like, and that's just a major team effort from teachers, parents. I mean, like, you had a lot of people that worked this summer, in many cases for free, to bring this together. It was very much a Hermosa Beach effort.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Barb. Doug, do you have any comments or questions?
I just want to say I wholeheartedly second everything that Barb said. She said it beautifully. So I agree with all of it. Thank you to everybody.
Stephen?
Brilliant. That's all I got. Thank you.
Maggie?
Thank you to everybody involved with it. I was really pleased that we were able to document all the stakeholder engagement that we did over the summer. I thought that was just so important to be out there with the parents. And then my ongoing comment is that that stakeholder engagement is just essential for us going forward, really being open and receptive and keeping as many possible communication lines open with teachers, with staff, with families to make sure that, you know, it's not going to be perfect, but how do we keep tweaking and adjusting? And I was pleased to see that we're going to use the PLP to do the diagnostic informative assessments with students to adjust for learning loss. So thank you for all of your work, everyone.
Thanks, Maggie. And I concur with what everyone else has said. I did, Jason, give you a couple notes in our conversation earlier, but I'll repeat them now here just in case. Just so everyone has them. I just thought maybe, first of all, it's a great document, great start. And I was happy that we also were able to share it with some of our neighboring districts that have been so gracious to us in the process of this whole summer. So, you know, it's a beast to put these things together. So we really appreciate the work. I was just wondering if you wanted to highlight some things, like I know you had talked verbally about meetings with the city and city officials about childcare. Maybe we just want to highlight that in some of our stakeholder engagement sections. I can't remember if we had met with the police department in any of this. So just partnerships with Beach Cities Health District with rapid testing, partnerships with South Bay Families Connected. And I know you talked through it, but I just want to make sure we document, or if you do.
Yeah, you actually brought up one that I completely forgot about, but yeah, I did have a meeting with Chief LeBaron, and then I also participated on the community advisory board that meets on a monthly basis. Yeah, that's one that I actually didn't think about. That's a good point.
And I don't know if you want to include in there just another point. It's not a district directed meeting, but we do meet regularly with the South Bay board presidents to kind of do a best practice meetup. And you do that, I think, as board, but we do it as board presidents, and I know you do it as superintendent. So I think that might be a good thing to add. I think you might want to add, and was there anything about IT meetings and Chromebook? I know we just talked about it, but in the actual document, like how many IT different things we're doing, specific things. I mean, like not in your presentation, but in the actual document itself.
We do, yeah. We highlight the Chromebook stabilization plan and its components, because that is related to ensuring that all subgroups have access to technology.
Okay, great. And I think we've also, I don't know if we've talked about it, but just how people can get a free access to Wi-Fi if they need it through local channels. These were all things too that were brought up in the South Bay Board Presidents meeting through our CBSA rep, Sarah Bradshaw. So she kind of she was like, make sure you add as much as possible in this document. So,
yeah, and we have incorporated that information as well too about accessing internet and technology.
Okay, cool. That was it. That's all I had. So great job. Thank you guys so much for all that. And again, if the public has comments, please feel free to share those with us sooner rather than later. We do have to have a board agendized approval on this by September 30th of the month. So when is the drop dead for comments?
Yeah, I would say that by the end of this week, by the end of, so Wednesday probably would be the best time where we're still in timeline for our submission and approval, especially if the feedback is substantial.
Okay. Thank you so much. Let's move on then to the superintendent report and board discussion. R-12-20/21 enrollment update, Ms. Gluck.
Perfect. Okay. Tonight we will be looking at enrollment, historical data, and trends on movement within the district. Slide, please. We begin our presentation by looking at a comparison of enrollment from last year's first day of school versus enrollment for the 2020-21 school year. Last year, we entered the school year with 1,352 students, and this year we began the school year with 1,220 students. The 2021 school year, by far, is a school year in education that is different than years past. This year, the district began the school year in distance learning based on the governor's orders as related to the COVID-19 pandemic. HBCSD began the first day of school with a 10% loss of student enrollment from last year. The table just shows a breakdown this year versus last year, and this is the first day at both schools, both at the school sites for both years. Slide, please. So our school secretaries worked diligently to call all families who did not show up for distance learning the first 2 days of school, September 3rd and 4th. The information provided on this slide shows our current enrollment as of yesterday, September 8th, 2020. So we did have a slight decrease. So our enrollment as of yesterday was 1,209. Slide, please. 10 days prior to each school year, VIEW's secretary sends an email through school messenger. It's basically an intent to return for the next school year. This is an opportunity for our families to advise us if they are disenrolling from our school sites to finalize and balance our class list. Our district closely monitors enrollment over summer, and the week of July 27th, we had our highest enrollment, which was 1,325 students. The following week on August 7th, the district published the reopening school plan. Subsequently, the district began to notice a decline in enrollment. On August 13th, the district implemented an exit survey, which solicited responses from our parents on reasons for disenrollment. The purpose of the survey was to solicit feedback on a family's experience with the district during distance learning and reasons on why they were leaving. The survey totaled 3 questions, and there was 1 response for additional feedback. Slide, please. So questions 1 and 2 of the survey are based on a Likert scale. A Likert scale is a question that uses a 5-point scale, sometimes referred to as satisfaction scale, and that ranges from one extreme attitude to another. The middle number is usually neutral, and that's the first question is, during the 2019-2000 school year, how would you rate your experience during distance learning? Although we had 73 responses total in regards to the survey, 63 parents responded to this question. 5 was great, 1 was poor, and 3 was neutral. Slide, please. So how much did your, back please, yeah, there you go. Question 2 was, how much did your experience during the 2019-2020 distance learning contribute to your decision to leave the district? 66 people decided to respond to this question. 5 was most important, 1 was did not contribute, and 3 was neutral. Slide, please. The third question was, are you moving out of the school district's boundary, or are you choosing a different school option? And then the options were permanent, private, homeschool, etc. We received the most responses in this area. We had 72 responses. 83.3% were leaving the school district for a permit, private, or homeschooling. And then 16.7% was they were just moving out of the school district boundaries. Slide, please. Based on the final question of the survey, it was open-ended, why were people leaving? The responses that are provided were the most frequently stated responses. Lack of daycare option was by far very prevalent. A lot of our families still wish to attend school in person, and the private schools were offering that option. There was too much screen time. there wasn't an option for independent study. Homeschooling was another area that people sought after. They felt that the lack of synchronous instruction during last spring would be the same as this year. They were moving out of the district. A lot of families were staying in preschool for kindergarten because preschools can offer a five-year-old program, and a lot of families wanted a 5-day-a-week option for students to attend school on a brick and mortar site. Slide, please. So when we look at the future in regards to attendance, there are many considerations that we need to take into factor, The one thing is programming. Lack of enrollment does affect our programming and the number of courses that we can offer to our students, specifically in the area of electives in middle school, and what kind of specials we can offer. There is inter-district permits. We should be increasing our inter-district permits to capture enrollment. With a decline in enrollment, staffing will be an issue when we look at staffing for the following school year, because we want to make sure that we're not overstaffed. And last but not least, we really should be looking at a possibility of providing our families with an independent study option for families who feel maybe the asynchronous instruction is too much and that they can do the independent study on their own. Slide, please. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Gluck. I'll start with Stephen.
Thank you very much. With regards to being the data and funding, can you clarify what period will be held harmless for moving forward?
I'll have Dr. Johnson answer that question.
Yeah, so for this school year, our ADA will be held harmless. For the following school year, our ADA will be based upon the highest of two numbers, either this school year or 1920. In this case, it would definitely be 1920. The 3 years out, or that would be the 22-23 school year, it has not been determined by the CDE about how ADA funding will work. And what we're looking at is, I believe, it's a 9% loss of enrollment, which would be 10%, Paula, which would be catastrophic as far as funding goes, because that would be a substantial cut to our budget. So right now, we're protected under the current held harmless ADA scheme, but it does behoove us to not rely on that, and we should be making every effort to recapture enrollment over the course of this year and the following.
Any other questions, Stephen? Maggie?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Gluck. I think my questions, and either for you or for Superintendent Johnson, are on more about what the inter-district permit process looks like and how we communicate that out to the community as a first one.
Yeah, at this time, so we had inter-district permits that they had already applied for, and we granted those permits based off of our loss of enrollment. And we are currently looking at how can we communicate outside of our school district that we are now open at all grade levels as far as enrollment goes, because we have space. There should be some consideration given to that when we move to hybrid and or in-person learning, that there may perhaps be an enrollment surge, which makes it incredibly difficult to plan for from a staffing and from an instructional model standpoint. So it's very difficult to get an indicator of like what our true enrollment may be with in-person. But that's something that we're currently looking at is, what can we do moving forward to perhaps either attract or at least message inter-district permits being accepted.
And I don't recollect this previously. Once upon a time, Hermosa Beach District welcomed in city employee children's, even if they were out of district, as a way to keep city employees and families together in the community. And then I think we had to put a pause on that because of capacity issues. Have we reached back out to city staff to like let them know about, like, as a specific targeted group of members of the community who would want to attract back in?
Maggie, just so I make sure I heard you right, you're talking about like Hermosa Beach city staff or our school district staff? I have not, and I will. City Manager Lowenthal and I have just talked about doing our quarterly meetings with each other. So I will follow up with Ms. Lowenthal about that subject. I was not aware that we offered that to city employees, and that'd be a great starting point.
And then Ms. Gluck can correct me if that history isn't correct, but I'm pretty sure that was the history that we had on that in terms of district.
We haven't taken inter-district permits from city employees for quite some time because we've been at capacity and trying to maintain our school-wide average to receive funding from the state. So it's been, I would say, over a decade that we've done that.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
I think that's it on my questions right now. Thank you again for doing that survey work. I think it's really important information.
Thanks, Maggie. Doug?
No, thank you everyone for the presentation. I don't really have any questions, but I think the comment, Jason, you alluded to it, are we going to get a surge? I think particularly as we look, Ms. Gluck's comment about staffing, we kind of get the one shot in March to look at staffing. And so, if there's any way to try to, I don't know if we kept a list of families who we can reach back out to see if they plan to return next year, if things are looking better or things like that. There's a way leading up to that March period where we can be able to get a true sense of, not even a true sense, but a better sense, I guess is probably the right word of, do people plan to return if, the COVID outlook is looking better? Are we going to get a surge before then? Are we going to get are people, if that point is in February that we're in-person learning, we may not get the surge this year. People may say, okay, I'm going to continue what I'm doing for the rest of this year, but come September next year, I'm going to come back to really be, to me, that's like the point that we need to be prepared, because we do get kind of that one shot on the staffing levels for the certificate. So I think we just need to be as best prepped as we can be at that point.
That's great feedback. We will do that. Thank you for that. That's a great suggestion.
Maggie, we'll circle back to you in just 1 minute. Let me just let Barb. Go ahead.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Maggie? We can't hear you.
That sound dropped out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
In terms of thinking about enrollment and funding for the district, I'd also just like to raise that, as we go through this year, I think it's really important that we keep a parcel tax conversation on the table in terms of outside funding sources. Lessons learned from Measure Q, Measure S is that, it takes at least 6 months for us as a district to get the data to show, the budget implications and the need for programming, and then to do the polling work and to do the community outreach. So just to keep that timetable in mind as the funding picture becomes more clear about enrollment and monies coming from the federal government and the state government and how it all impacts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, if you start to look at how the numbers are playing out, it's important to highlight that with a loss of enrollment, also will inevitably come a loss of Ed Foundation dollars, because that's potentially 100 people that would have donated to the Ed Foundation. And then, our budget is based off of a 3-year model. So you really have to think about it in those terms. And you'll see in our budget presentation today, and we're going into years of extreme economic uncertainty when it comes to state funding. So an ADA loss of 10% combined with a potential cut down the road of 10%, because that was the governor's original proposal, was 10%, which that would have, and then now combine that also too with a loss of HBF revenue. And I mean, you could be looking at a potential of somewhere between a 25% to 10% total cut to our budget on top of the losses we've already incurred. So I would say that there's a strong potential for a need for alternative revenue moving forward the next 3 years to keep the school district moving.
Thank you for that, Jason. Yeah, Maggie, I agree with you. My one thing we talked about along this process, though, is making sure we are celebrating and talking about all the great things we are doing at the district, because even before this year, we were losing almost half of our kindergarten enrollment to outside other schools, private schools. And there still is a lot of students in Hermosa Beach that would want to come to Hermosa Beach schools when we explain to them, and show off our great programming and things we're doing in the district along the way here. So just as much as we can start, I think, along with what Doug was suggesting, but start thinking about how are we messaging what we're doing? What kind of marketing strategy are we doing for the district? Or, how are we thinking forward? Well, we're going to have some new buildings to celebrate. We're going to have awesome, teacher participation in this distance learning and some really good showcase things that are happening with our community. So trying to keep the drumbeat on that as well. All right, and if there's no further questions, then we will move on to R-13-20/21, the 2020-2021 professional development. Ms. Gleck, Mr. Scott, and Ms. Rockwell.
So tonight we'd like to share with you our professional development plan that we've created to support our teachers during distance learning. Slide, please. So I found this quote on the internet and I found it was fitting for where we're at today. It's children are our priority. Change is the reality. Collaboration is the strategy. This is the mantra that we are going to live by this year in regards to supporting everyone involved, because we do want to put our children first. We know that our methods of teaching are changing this year, but in order to be successful, we need to collaborate. Slide, please. So going into the 2021 school year, the district needed to prioritize distance learning to address our teachers' needs as related to the new technologies. Our approach is one of support. Contractually, we have 2 days prior to the school year for professional development. We've negotiated with the Hermosa Beach Education Association to have an additional day of PD where we pay teachers to come back to school early. We've dedicated 5 teachers to be hybrid distance learning mentors. We've worked on the schedule to make sure that we had dedicated time weekly on Mondays and in the afternoons that would be specific for professional development, whether it was at the district level or at the site level. And our framework, it's at both sites, because the district has our overarching goals and the site has individual needs that we need to make sure that we're addressing. Slide, please. So our framework, we have a lot going on this year, more than ever, I think. So we have social emotional professional development that will be with Mind Up. We've purchased Second Step for our middle school. We have trauma training, and we have Beach Cities. They will be doing mental checkups at staff meetings. We also have Cova training. This year, we did a lot of this. We did a plan, prepare, respond training, how to wear a mask, proper hand washing, basic pest management in the school and child care settings, and the difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. That was a special training that our maintenance and operations workers completed. For our special populations, we will be focusing on unique learning, which is an online curriculum that our special ed department will be using. SACE, which is our learning management system for special education, and it's more of a area that we use to document student information. We also have weekly meetings with our special education team. I meet with the the special ed team on the first and third week of every month, and the principals will also meet on the second and fourth, and we do have those Wednesdays before school. And then there's additional training that can be done at the SELPA for our special education professionals where they feel they may need some extra training. In regards to technology, we've done training on schools PLP. Our distance learning and hybrid teachers have done training on Screencastify, Zoom, and Google Voice. We will have training on our single sign-on and bring your own device, as well as iReady. For curriculum, we focused on schools PLP, specifically Lincoln Learning. Amplify has changed a little bit of their curriculum, so we'll need to provide our staff with a boost on Amplify. And this year, Eureka, we purchased an online portion that the teachers will need to get an update on how to use the new videos and the system that Eureka has set up. Intervention, we will be really focusing on learning loss mitigation through iReady. Just today we met with the iReady reps, and we've set up 3 benchmark dates, one for each trimester, that we will focus on assessing our students, collecting data, learning how to target where their needs are at. And iReady will provide individual instruction for all of our students to help lessen the gaps that they have due to COVID. And then we have Lexia, an ELA program that we can use as well for our students who need some help. And we also purchased Sound Partners, brand new, that our reading specialists will use at VU. Other trainings we had is we had mandated child report training, bloodborne pathogens training, and the Department of Pesticide training. So we have a lot going on, and we really want to focus on those Mondays to complement what the teachers are doing to provide them support to make our program the best it can be in the South Bay. Slide, please. So the start of the school year, we had 3 days of training, and we did meet one day with special education, and we really did a focus on these what's called a emergency learning plan, where we will provide to our parents with students on IEP what their services will look like during distance learning, and all the providers will work together and give the families a schedule. We talked about in-person assessments. We have many students who need to be assessed for special education, and our timelines were told when we went into distance learning in March, so we are having to move forward to assess students, so we had to put together some protocols in place, train our staff on it. The expectations with distance learning for our special education staff, what does that look like? And we did talk about caseloads. On August 31st, we spent the morning on schools PLP. Elementary as well as middle school received individual training. Screencastify, Zoom, Google Voice. We focused on norms during distance learning. What does that look like? How should everyone be participating? And we did put a big push on grade level collaboration. It's our intention as a district that our teachers are collaborating together, pushing out the same curriculum, pacing at the same time, so that our families are all receiving a very similar experience, and all the grade level content standards will be covered at the same pace. On September 1st, we once again did schools PLP. We focused on staff health and safety guidance. We really did a big push on building community through distance learning. Ted and Amy worked on getting to Zoom U, and the afternoon was focused again on grade level collaboration. September 2nd was our last and final day of PD for the prior to school starting, and that was specific to each individual school site. Ted and Amy will be sharing with you later in the presentation what they specifically covered with their staff. But most importantly, there was a focus on digital engagement and social emotional learning strategies. And then school began, our first day. And it was a great first day. I was really proud of the whole team. Slide, please. Okay, Ted, you're up.
Thank you, Ms. Buck. Okay, so yes, August 31st, September 1st and 2nd, we covered an enormous amount of material with our staff. Our staff worked so hard on schools PLP, the social emotional learning, reviewing the master schedules, talking about the health protocols, on and off campus, everything we need to do to keep our staff and our students safe. Student engagement, digital resources, they produced, we talked about, and they produced the most amazing welcome back videos you've ever seen. And many of you have seen them. So I know that I have to say, I was just blown away by the talent. We also talked about special education protocols. It was just a jam-packed 3 days worth of training with the Hermosa View staff. And it was actually TK5 that I was working with. Slide, please.
Hi, good evening. We covered similar topics at Hermosa Valley for grades 6 through 8, so focused on middle school, jam-packed for a few days there. So big shout out to my staff for just hanging in there and getting all the information and working so hard. So we also reviewed health protocols and safety on campus, and like it was mentioned earlier, many of our staff members have been electing to come to campus, and so a lot of that review is how are we safe on campus, what are those protocols that we're following, and they've been following through with that. We also reviewed schedules, as it was a schedule change for everybody this year. What does a weekly schedule look like, office hours, and things like that. Heavy emphasis on schools PLP. Schools PLP directed training from a schools PLP rep who's been working closely with Sylvia and our staff. So big thanks to them. There's still a lot to learn with schools PLP, so we're going to be continuing with that training. The features of Zoom and Screencastify. As was mentioned earlier, we have our HD consultants who have been amazing with helping our staff get ready for the school year, being available for staff to help support them and putting together not just informative, but also entertaining PD for our staff. So how to conduct a Zoom, how to set up your settings in Zoom, how to create a Screencastify, and some of those fun options through that. And with that, our staff at the middle school created a Zooming to Know You and welcome videos that went out to all of our middle school students. So it had each teacher's Zoom link separated by grade level and a welcome video introducing themselves, talking a little bit about their class. So it was a little more comfortable for students to come in on the first day virtually. Our HD consultants also did some heavy lifting with community building. They provided some resources that were pages and pages long of options that teachers could utilize day in their class of how to build community in a virtual space, which is different than we've ever experienced. In the spring, we had the benefit of knowing our students, and at the beginning of the year, especially for our middle school teachers, it was a whole new set of kids. So having those resources was extremely valuable, and our staff got to participate in a few of those activities, which was fun as well. So big shout out to my HD consultants, and I've shared some pictures from the first few days here with you, and I want to point out everybody really did just an amazing job getting our kids on, getting them engaged, and treating the beginning of the year traditions still. Mr. Hecker always dresses up every year for the first day of school. He dressed up on Thursday and Friday because there were 2 first days of school. So it was wonderful to be back on campus and to see a lot of people back on campus and to see our students' happy faces on our Zoom calls. So next slide, please.
Okay, so looking forward, we have so much training and PD planned in September and October. The following Monday, September 14th, we have schools PLP. We are supposed to have single sign-on securely. However, just today, I just moved that because we are going to be getting training on our new iReady program on September 21st. So we can start that assessment for learning loss throughout all of the entire district. We are getting social emotional training on the 28th. Schools PLP will return on October 5th. Then Beach Cities will be hosting Mind Up training on October 12th. Then on the 19th, iReady intervention. Again, we're having a follow-up. So the first training will be on getting our assessments and collecting our data from our students. And then the following training with iReady will be how to utilize that data and really digging in and applying the interventions so that we can meet the needs of our students right where they're at. And then on October 26th, we have our hybrid distance learning teachers that are going to train our staff in some new programs. And then also we're going to come back and pick up the single sign-on and securely. So it's a busy, busy time in professional development in Hermosa Beach. Slide, please. Questions?
Phew, that was amazing. That was so inspiring. I'm like, God, I want to go back to school. All right, so let's start with Barb. Any questions, comments?
I have nothing, but let me just say this, that our staff, they're very, very, very fortunate to have all of that support, because have it done in such a thoughtful way that there's a lot of coordination already, because to have to do it on your own is very difficult. So the whole PLP, that whole portion of it, and then like you're saying with the diagnostic tool already embedded in it, it's taking a lot of stress off of them, so they can focus on the kids and the curriculum. Kudos.
Thank you so much.
We'll move to Doug.
Yeah, I'll just continue to follow Barb and just wholeheartedly second everything that she says. That's all I got as well.
Thank you. Stephen?
More brilliance. And the proof is in the pudding. And, you know, having the kids and myself experiencing everything on, you know, the other end of things, it shows. It's really great. So there's a lot of work that's gone in, and the school spirit as well, everything. So, you know, that's clearly all the PD has gone in to support that proof and pudding. So well done.
Thanks, Stephen. We'll go to Maggie. No questions from Maggie, I said then. And I just want to compliment on Zooming to know you. I mean, that's, you got it. It's like, no one's laughing. That's funny. That's good. But thank you guys. I was just making a note to myself to see if there's a time when maybe the board or someone can pop in on any of those PDs just so we can like see it in real time. That'd be fun. So.
And then President Cole, I just want to take a moment too, just to acknowledge just our teachers in this, you know, like, while we have a professional development plan, it doesn't go without teachers breaking their back, and very much they've done so. When you see all those programs, that's a lot of programs one has to learn as well too. And so I just a lot of thoughtful feedback. It looks nice in presentation, but like, you know, like the work is in the trenches, and that really is the teacher's work. So just a big shout out to our teachers for really hustling in the last week and a half. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I'm sure the principals can attest to that.
Great. Well, thank you all for all the hard work. So we're going to move off of professional development onto another exciting topic, R-14-20/21, the discussion on renaming North School. Dr. Johnson and Ms. Montablo.
Take it away, Miss M.
Miss M, okay. Yes, we wanted to discuss, and not renaming, we want to discuss naming North School. We reached out to CDE and they gave us the basic information. We just need to submit an application with a name, the new name of North School on it, and it will get processed.
And just to clarify here, what we found is that the school hasn't been operational for so long that from the CDE standpoint, there is no school anymore. So we really are effectively naming a new school.
Thank you for that clarification. And so the process tonight is just we want to lead a discussion on what are some options, and we have to vote on it, or is it we are just discussing, and then will there be a vote, a board action item next time? Is there a date we have to discuss this by?
No. And to be honest with you, we don't actually believe that the board actually has to take action on this, because from the CDE standpoint, it really is just an effective naming of a new school. However, the board may take action if they want to formalize naming the school, but what I can't emphasize enough what we learned from the CDE, and this just happened recently too, within this week, that it's effectively naming a new school. So this is an opportunity. We believed originally when we were going to present to the board that we would be presenting on a pretty formal process of renaming a school, but now I've come to learn just recently that it is effectively we're naming a new school, and the process is relatively short for what we need to do. So this is an opportunity for the board at this point to have discussion about what the intended new name of the school should be.
Great. Well, let's start. Shall we? I'm happy to go through each of you, and we can have a discussion that way about ideas or maybe ways you want to approach this. Doug, I'll start with you today.
Sure, I won't follow Barb. I'm going to get my prop really quick, so give me 1 second.
Uh-oh. Into the closet.
So the direction that I've been given, and I wholeheartedly believe it, is that we do need a name that starts with a V. So I can continue to wear this hat no matter what school my kids are going to. I know that, PTO in particular, I'm sure HBF and all the other groups wholeheartedly believe that the V should continue. So we continue this trend of, the HVS, and, everything kind of continues there. It does have a nice ring to it. In that sense, I have joked with my children, at least, that the V should be Velociraptor. I'm not convinced that should actually be it, but I think that would be kind of amazing. But the V names that I have heard Vista, I've heard Verde, and I'm sure there's some other ones out there, but that is kind of my strong point, is we do pick something that is the V.
All right, thanks, Doug. That's the good way to start. Who would like to follow Doug tonight? I'll let Stephen. How about you? Want to go next? I know you have a thought about it too.
Yeah, thank you. I follow Doug's point. I think that, well, and just to re-emphasize and go back again, I think it was great to sort of clarify it's not renaming, it's not naming North School, it's naming a new school. And I think, so that, I think as I was thinking through on it, and reflecting on potential community input or what have you, I think, certainly we have a soon to be three site, one school solution. And in my mind, as a strategic sort of fit, the HVS is key. That's great. I think that, knowing that by code and whatever else, we can potentially make the process a simple one. I think we've got significant sharks circling our body, metaphorically speaking, with various other things. And so, without sucking up too much oxygen on this one, I think that I strongly support the HVS. I think that sort of from a design perspective, haven't been up to that level, but that certainly the view and the vista that's going to be up there. It's hard to get around the V's. I think it aligns to that as a particular name. So, I think that fits incredibly well. And, from a marketing and naming standpoint, that can be an incredibly arduous and lengthy process potentially, with a brand or a business or a school. But this all seems to line up, serendipitously to come up with a great name for HVS for this new school. So I think those are just my thoughts, and I go back to sort of, we've got 3 site, 1 school solution, and it's HVS.
All right. So no other V names coming out from you. We've got Velociraptor.
It's close on that, but that was a good one. Yeah.
You have to repeat that word, Douglas. Doug.
Velociraptor.
Velociraptor, yes. Okay, so we have View. Sorry, we have Vista and Velociraptor. Uh-huh. And
Totally.
Maggie?
Sorry, double unmute. I agree with Doug's point on it. I do think there is an alignment with keeping the branding of HBPTO and looking for the named words. Vista does come to mind, but I'm open to what that process looks like. I do think PTO and Ed Foundation should have a say in this process since they work with such a large group of stakeholders within the community. That's it.
Thanks, Maggie and Barb.
I do personally love that, you know, to continue that HBS theme, but we are limited with the V words. What I would love to see, where I grew up, they finally built a high school after, I don't know, 30 years or something, and the kids had a contest and named the school. I would love to see the students involved somehow.
I don't mean to make light of Velociraptor, Doug, but I think that if the kids have a vote, that might get up higher. Thank you, Barb. I like the HBS. Yeah, just that moniker, that branding. So I'm for a V word, but I'm not sure how we involve everyone in this process, or how we involve other stakeholders in the process. To come to a name, again, I agree with Stephen. It can be very hard to make a decision in a committee like that. Do we have any guidance on something like that? Has anybody been a part of naming something like this before, or is it something that you just take board direction from? I'm not sure. Paula or Dr. Johnson, if you have any suggestions on that.
So from our standpoint, to me, I do this one of 2 ways. I second, you know, I know I don't have a vote, but I definitely agree with the HVS sentiment from, especially from the standpoint from the continuity of schools. I do think that what we're shooting for is to really be identified as, especially we've just had a conversation about enrollment and marketing our schools, but, you know, being 1 school at 3 sites really, I think, is important. And I do think that a common HBS name really helps communicate that point. I do think that if you have a name or a title that's outside of that, it could reinforce that, you mean, like, that these are entirely separate schools when they very much are not. And I can tell you now, having worked in the district for 3 months, even between View and Valley, we very much function as 1 school. And a lot of our work you see between the admin team is completely collaborative, and that includes teachers and staff. So I do think that perhaps the board should set a parameter, and maybe that does come from HBS, and that fulfills, I would say, our vision or the board's vision of the future of the school district and the opening of the schools. And then perhaps do an opportunity, maybe perhaps a public hearing where stakeholders could provide comment and input to provide an opportunity for the board to hear direction from community. So I see that as an opportunity, and the board could take action on moving forward with a name.
I think that sounds like a great plan. Can we set that up for, which board meeting can we set that up for? I mean, how urgent is it?
It's not urgent, but I mean, we can set that up for the October board meeting.
Okay, I think that sounds good. Is everyone kind of in agreement on that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because we've opened the discussion tonight, you know, and
Yeah.
I think each of us, and the administration could go to, teachers may have a point of view. Obviously, we could, PTO and HBF will have a point of view. Some of their other folks. I do know there's on the 22nd, there's the general meeting. I'm just looking at the calendar over here.
Yeah.
PTO, HBF. It could be something that gets, at least brainstormed there a little bit. I don't mean to put things on their agenda, and then for us to come back, in October, and people can obviously send comments to any of us, and written or oral, and then we can make a decision.
I think that sounds like a good plan. Maggie and Barb, you on board with that too? Okay, great. All right, so then are we okay to move on then? All right, we're gonna move on then tonight to Hermosa Beach R-15-21 Hermosa Beach City School District's equity resolution that Maggie and I are putting forth in front of the board tonight. And this is again under a discussion item. And I wanted to just kind of give some parameters of how we thought we could lead the discussion tonight about this. Again, I just wanted to remind us all here on this conversation and just the public that just the opportunity with a resolution is, so we're just trying to gather feedback. And we initially asked for feedback to be sent to Dr. Johnson and myself, and we realized that in the process we actually needed to just have public feedback in a public forum. So that was kind of our mistake, but we're kind of correcting that right now. So, and the purpose of creating the equity resolution is to kind of it's like a snapshot in time, and Maggie kind of jump in on this whenever you would like to. But so the equity resolution, the front part of it is kind of a snapshot of where things are. And that's where you get all the whereases in the first kind of four pages. And then when we get to the resolved section is where we're kind of building on what we want to happen with the equity resolution. And in that, we just want to make sure when we're thinking about comments, we want to make sure that we're not over creating what the task force or whatever we decide we want to call it is that we aren't doing the work, that the actual group that is going to be meeting is going to be what the work that they are going to do, because we want to try to make sure that we're kind of leading with an equity lens as well when we put this forward. So just keeping that in mind tonight. We have set aside time on September 23rd to have a special session. We thought we would give ourselves about 20 minutes tonight to go through the resolution. If we can't get through it in 20 minutes in terms of if there are discussion or comments on particular items, then we can table the discussion till the 23rd of September. And we can have further discussion and take board action, I think, at the same meeting. Is that correct? I'm looking for, okay, great. So I thought what we could do in order to be mindful of the time is if, Michelle, if you can remind us at 8:20 that we are going to stop this conversation if we aren't into a place that, and then we can kind of table it for the 23rd of September. The other thing I wanted to do is read to everyone the feedback we got from Tara Owens, and I'm forgetting the whole name of their organization. Stephen, do you have it on off the top of your head?
South Bay Cares.
South Bay Cares. Okay, so they had looked at the resolution from the public meeting we had the last time in August, and this was some of the feedback that they had given us. And I went through the resolution myself and kind of highlighted on the pages that they talked about. So I will give you page numbers with each of their comments, so that might help you to locate them. Comment number 1 says, on reconsider the language task force, maybe equity team or equity committee. And we refer to it as a task force on page 6 of our resolution. The second comment, the role of the staff members who will serve on the task force should be more detailed. How will they represent the larger staff? How will they obtain feedback from colleagues on an ongoing basis? And that is could be potentially outlined on page 8. The board should not define equity for the task force. The task force should be the ones to define equity. Student voice is important in defining equity, and that we talk about the board defining equity on page 6. The next comment was the role of the students who will serve on the task force should be more detailed. It is important that the students have a true voice and equal voice. How will they communicate with and obtain feedback from other students? They should engage with peers on what equity means to students. And I think we talk about that again when we talk about who should make up the task force, and that's on page 8. The process of the development of the equity task force must be a model for equity. An equity committee needs time to form equitably. The task force needs to be empowered and formed through an equity lens. Goals can be put in place after the task force is created. The way it reads now seems too rigid when the task force hasn't been created. Rigid goals and timelines create inequity in the development of the task force. And there is too little time allotted for applications to be submitted and reviewed. The application period should be moved to an earlier date, as much of that work the board was planning to do should actually be done by the equity committee itself. And those are all referred to on page 6, page 8, and page 6. The board and task force must define and model equity through their own communications. The group itself must be equitable. I think that is just a comment. The language about low diversity should be removed. It diminishes the need for the task force and could be off-putting to a potentially good candidate, and that we refer to on page 1. And there's a reason I use that word. And then let's see, equity is not just the achievement gap. Social and emotional wellness must also be addressed, and kids reported bullying and racism. This needs specific attention. And I think that is on page 8. No, sorry, that is on page 4. Consider using different language about who you are recruiting to be on the committee. Suggested language is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Reconsider the language of socioeconomic disadvantaged, and that is on page 7. It is important that it is clear to each member of the committee. It is important that it is clear that each member of the committee will be representing a larger group, i.e. students, school staff, parents, etc. Recruitment can be done through principal emails, room parent emails, and local newspapers. And that's on page 8 when we talk about recruitment or who should be on the committee. Questions they had, is the timeline important and why? And that's on page 8. How will the equity team members be chosen? What will the process be like? And what are the criteria for selection? Those are just good questions. What exactly is a community leader? I'm not sure what page that was referenced because we talked about community member, not community leader, but maybe there was a typo. Is this being done in response to racial inequity? And is the goal of this racial equity? Sorry, I read that wrong. Is this being done in response to racial inequality? And is the goal of this racial equity? I was a little confused. This is the question that the team posed. I was a little confused about students with disabilities being lumped into this. Seems like an important but maybe separate issue. If it is a larger lens than race, I would add LGBTQ students and or families. And I think that is already addressed, but we can look at it. And will the 4 parents be one from each of the listed criteria, one with disability, one ESL, one non-white, one low income, or could it be 4 with disabilities? Need to make sure you are selecting people representative of all groups, and that we talk about on page 7. So with those comments and feedback and our own, Maggie, do you want to make any comment first? But because I was thinking we might go through page by page, but go ahead.
Just to provide some more context now that everybody has had a chance to sit with this. I started this work back in the fall of 2018 with Kim Taylor and Pat Escalante, trying to figure out where we had board policies on equity. And we actually have really great board policies talking about equity and inclusion across the district. Like the language is there, but we've never created a tool to implement, right? And so that's where, Jen had introduced this in the spring when we had the murder of George Floyd and general kind of unrest across the country that's still taking us today, like drawing attention to racial inequity that is happening. But in general, this is one about anti-racist language, but it's also broader about creating an inclusive community, right? So I think it's a two-part point of how we talk about inclusivity and equity within the district, with a specific call out for anti-racist policies and culture building that we do with our work. So again, we have good language in the district. This is a tool to get us started. And for me, just knowing that I've been sitting now for 2 years with this work, like there is real urgency to get this tool up and going and in place, because things die by committee, right? Like I don't want this work to die by committee. I would like to see us get off the ground with a tool, knowing that we're going to come back to it and we're not going to get it right the first time, but we're going to start the process and get this off the ground to really have this conversation about what it means to be inclusive community in Hermosa.
Thank you, Maggie. So with that, having that as the background to everything, shall we go through, since we have now 15 more minutes at this stage, go through each page and see if there's questions and concerns that we have through each page or a section on a page? I'm not sure what would be, that's probably how I would do it. I would start with page 1. And are there comments that are concerns or questions that we should either agree on or agree there are none? And I would be happy to, I can't see everyone at one time here for some reason. So yes, Barb.
I just have a couple of, I guess, overall comments that, addressing or responding to the recommendations that you just read. And it kind of goes throughout the document. The task force, changing that to a committee, I still think it's a task force at this point, because they are going to determine what the needs are based on what we determine equity is. And so I believe it would be the task force that does have a beginning and an end date would recommend if there would be an ongoing committee. So I do think that you're using the right language there, task force and not committee. It's too early to decide. A committee would be an ongoing thing. Task force is just, has this one goal, not one goal, but, has this overall goal of determining, how to measure the equity, et cetera. Anyway, so that was one of my points. And then, I kind of already mentioned that the whole thing about the board should not be the one defining equity. We have to, just like everything else, we have to have that overall bigger picture and clear picture of where we want the district to go. And so we do need to be able to determine for ourselves and for the district what equity means in order to direct the task force, in my opinion.
Thank you, Barb. Other global comments? Oh, so go ahead, Barb.
One more. I'm sorry. One more.
No, don't apologize, Barb.
And equity and the inclusion, I believe, it extends far beyond. It does include our special needs students and our low socioeconomic students. And personally, I believe that the socioeconomic status of families and of children cause a very, very big divide. And in fact, the racial inequities and institutional racism, et cetera. And so I believe we need to include all of that. And yes, for sure, special needs falls under that category, as does the gender identity, et cetera.
Yeah, I agree. Any other global comments from Barb at this point? I'll just keep, I'm going to keep looking down the list here. And any, Stephen?
Yeah.
You want to just take page 1, everyone, or do you guys want to take it, like, do you have like a global comment and then a page by page? How do we?
I've got maybe some more global comments, but
Okay.
Happy to go whichever direction you'd like.
I think we should do some global ones.
Can I weigh in?
Yep. Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, jump in. Okay.
Just remember that there's 2 other people and we are now at 11 more minutes.
Totally. Okay. I'll be ruthless with time.
But because we can continue this conversation.
No, absolutely. And thank you. I appreciate it. I think my global comment is I think this is important, and per Maggie's, how she's described it as a tool to implement. I think it's important to aggressively keep moving this forwards and not get bogged down in sort of wordsmithing and tooling and what have you. So by way of global comments, I think, there's a lot of input. I personally have reached out to a lot of community groups, and I won't list them now, but I think that, what we're doing here is a board commitment. I also like that because other districts, I believe it's maybe come as maybe more superintendent directed, etc. But this is the board going, look, we need to make this, and this is going to be, I like also Barb's point about task force, because I did this nomenclature thing was stressing me a bit, but it's not, I think it gets us moving forwards, and then it's for the task force to decide, whatever is the best equitable, description that they see fit. Likewise on timing, likewise on stakeholders. I think it's got, we've got to define that. I think there are things in here that there's certain small language, which is important. I don't think we specify BIPOC in our document. We refer to things that, we refer to Caucasian when maybe it's more appropriate to describe it as white. So, I think that there's just looking at through those sort of importance to maybe just make sure there's a sharp pen on that. But the comments raised by community members about representation, I think is an important one in terms of BIPOC, LGBTQIA plus, young, old, special needs, underserved, etc. Like it's important, and I think while we should probably just maybe not for further discussion, but how we define that. But I also am looking at, there's a draft template for applying, and I just wonder how, looking at that application, how we're going to get the appropriate sort of understanding to sort of then how what is the process. And I don't know. I think that warrants further discussion. And then further in terms of the task force determining timing, other pieces, I think that again, that's sort of to be figured out further down. Let's get the tool moving forwards. I do think that the view here is that this is not this. The way I see this is it's not a committee that we're just, oh yeah, we're going to do this thing and we'll just have this committee over there because that's the right thing to do. One, I think I see this as it's got to be inherent and intrinsic to everything we're doing, and that's got to come both with board, superintendent, right the way through. This is and so as such, how we think about the timing on surveys and data and other pieces, I think it's not adjunct to another piece. It's how do we fit this in and really work it so that it becomes that piece that does. The vehicle keeps moving and we keep making progress.
Great, thank you. Doug?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with the points that Barb and Stephen have made, and particularly Stephen's point about continuing to move this thing forward. That's really the key piece. And so there was the comment about timelines and things like that. I think those are important. The board needs to set those. Otherwise, we will get bogged down in, people in committees and task force, whatever we want to call it, just work better with deadlines. And, we hold those to them. It's just human nature. So I think those types of things are important. And it's good to see, applications, decisions, reports, conclusions, and have goals to meet those things. I think is really important. I also second that, the exact wording, wordsmithing, is less important than just getting this thing up and moving. What Maggie said about I know she's been working on this for, 2+ years at this point, to make sure that we, it doesn't become 2+ years more from here
Right.
is really the key piece. So I think we just, you know, I don't know if we want to go page by page and kind of do all those pieces. I think the key point is like, you know, what does it take to get this thing out there, to get the application out there, to start reviewing them? You know, I think, you know, as far as Stephen's comment about, you know, how do we pick, you know, I guess my one question is this, you know, like the COC, are we going to get review applications in a board meeting and, you know, we appoint people in that way, or is it some other kind of like, is it the subgroup of board members and you know, superintendent making those decisions? I think that's the one kind of open-ended question, but that's that part we can figure out as we get closer to the deadline in October.
Thanks, Doug.
And I
Maggie?
had,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I had a couple of thoughts off this. And one, I just want to really express my gratitude to South Bay Cares for taking the time to go through the documents so rigorously. Like, it's so important. And thank you, Stephen, for doing the outreach to the different groups. Having a really comprehensive approach, I think, is important. In regards to the language that Jen and I looked at this, and I don't want to speak for Jen, but it was really important to like go with what is in ed code. So like purposely choosing not to use, you know, Black, Indigenous, people of color because it's not recognized in ed code, right? We're trying to create a tool that aligns to assessments that are currently out there. So I think that is going to be like a nuanced conversation we have to have of like what is culturally and socially used terms right now versus like ed code terms, which, you know, can feel dated and antiquated, right? But those are what's guiding how we do assessments. And so trying to create a whole new set of language that we might use socially won't align to assessments that are dictated by government bodies. I think like that's something we need to keep in mind as we go through and like create some of the language that goes into the document. And then the second part in terms of like thinking about how we create and how we monitor this, Jen and I put in there that this would be a superintendent's task force. And I think that's important that the board set the vision for this, but really allow the district to carry it through. We're only on the board for a certain amount of time. And like creating a foundation that keeps going beyond the board is really important, since Dr. Johnson and his team are going to have you know, the staff in place who are going to have to implement the policies after we leave the board, I think is just something we need to be mindful of. So having the board member presence on this is absolutely essential. But like, I do want to provide some deference to the district office in terms of like making the choices of like how staff are going to participate, right? Like those are some things that the district, I think, will be better equipped to delegate than we will as board members.
I agree with you, Maggie. So thank you for bringing that up. And so I too see that like one of the, I read through all the comments, and when I went through them, I second at what everybody says here, since we have 3 minutes on this particular thing. And I think that the main thing that I don't think we worked out well enough in this yet, and maybe we need to just, this is maybe what we work out on the 23rd, is how do we select and making sure we have the right application form so we can get the right selection of candidates, and what our criteria is for choosing people who are going to sit on the task force, and then defining kind of maybe the role. So when you are applying for it, you know that you're representing a larger group of people when you sit on this. So it's not just your own interest that you're representing. So I think those to me would be the two areas. Other than that, I agree with you, Stephen. Like we could, you know, could we wordsmith this to death? 100%. Is that the point of the resolution? No. We want to get the task force going so they can start moving things forward. And I agree with you, Doug. I do believe that putting, you know, I just think this thing could die by committee if we wait too long. And I do feel like there's a sense of urgency to it. So. To answer the question, one of the questions are in terms of the feedback. So can I suggest then, if we could agree to maybe focusing on those two areas of, and maybe Maggie and I could go back and maybe put some more definition.
Barb had a question.
Sorry, Barb, go ahead.
Oh, you know what? I think you were gonna, I believe that maybe we should work on the questions in the application
Yeah.
being more specific, based on, you know, what we determine is, you know, we're looking for in committee members, or sorry, task force members.
Yes, yes, I think I think that if I was to suggest that we do anything on the 23rd in the discussion part, that we review those two areas, and then we consider taking a vote on the resolution. Like, that's how maybe I would move it forward, and not over wordsmith the actual resolution itself. Does that seem like a good path forward? I see a thumbs up from everyone. Awesome. So I will work with Maggie, and we will take this feedback back to the resolution and the definition of what we want to see on the actual application, and kind of put a little more definition around what the roles are people will play. Okay. Thank you. Gosh, wow, we did so good. That was 20 minutes, everyone. I'm so proud of us. Dr. Johnson, do you have any other input or?
No, and I second just what was stated in the discussion. I was nodding my head a lot just because I agree about moving forward the work. And then also just I appreciate and definitely support that this is taking a broader lens of equity, because, you know, in speaking with the board, I've mentioned in the past that you mean like a school district's work is predicated on equity, or should be. So I do believe that the equity resolution is reinforcing what the work of schools should be, and I think that makes it more likely to succeed if it's interlocked with the school district's goals, rather than a side project on it. Like, if we're just being real. So I just I appreciate that lens and that approach, as well as you know, giving guidance and direction to the school district, and then you know, allowing the school district to do that work and then demonstrate outcomes.
Great, thank you. I feel very supported by this this process moving forward. So thank you. Thank you all for just the input and taking the time to read it. And Stephen, thank you for reaching out to all the different groups. And Tara Owens, thank you for all the considered feedback. It's definitely going to help us make a stronger resolution and a stronger task force moving forward. So excited to get this moving. So now we are going to push this aside for a minute, and we will move on to our next part, which is R-16-20/21 Measure S Facilities Program Update. We got a lot of good ones tonight. Go ahead, Paula.
Okay, thank you. Just a brief update on the Neighborhood Traffic Management Plan, or the NTMP. The subcommittee is still having an issue getting calendar, so we're still working with the city to get that on the calendar, and that should be coming soon. Significant progress is being made at North School, as you'll see in the presentation in the following pictures. View plans are at DSA, and it's looking like we're having a back check appointment later this week, so we're hoping to get plans approved and stamped sometime mid-September, by the 15th, we're hoping. And once those plans have been approved, it will allow Erickson Hall to gear up and start their bidding process and the estimating process within their office, so that they can bring to us a draft GMP. At that point, the district and Erickson Hall will meet for a final value engineering meeting and prepare to bring a final GMP to the board, hopefully in December, for your approval. And tonight we have just another quick PowerPoint presentation of pictures from the inside of North School to begin with. And Michelle, we'll go through the slides pretty quickly. So this is the front of the NPR. Next slide. This is an aerial view. This is inside the main room of the NPR. This is the kitchen area of the NPR. They're making huge progress. They're on the 5th lift of the ICF walls. That's the side view from the 26th Street gate. These are the ICF walls. You're looking at the interior, so it's a side view, and that's what's flipped up, and that's what's filled with concrete, and that's the rebar going through. They're continuing to install the fire sprinkler system. We have a couple of pictures of that. Go ahead, Michelle. And this is the outside structure of the window prep for installation of the windows. Going to be nice big windows. The plumbing is going in and the copper piping installation on various floors. Continuing piping on other floors. This is the interior of the build out of the classrooms. You can see the classrooms starting to take shape. So there's another view here down the corridor, and it's all coming together. It's amazing. This is in the second floor corridor where we're having the high cloud floating ceiling installation, and you can see the beams that are slated so that the ceiling isn't going to be even. Plumbing installation for the boys and girls restroom on the second floor, the main building. The exterior framing, it's going up. Those are our electrical transformers on the truck being delivered. This is the roof view. They're prepping for the concrete deck installation. Continuing, they're putting down the electrical pads and the HVAC pads on the roof of the main building. This is on the east side of the building where we had to shore. They're putting down the rebar to secure that east wall. More pictures of the east wall rebar rebuilt. Another view. They're actually putting in the wall. That's the east end of the building. Beautiful, nice sunset. This is a view of the slant roof. And our palm tree, they've come out, the gardener has come out, an arborist has come out and serviced the tree and done some trimming and opened up the frond, so it's looking a lot better.
A lot of love went into that tree.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, and this is the view. This is the view from the second floor principal's office. Out on the ocean. So then
What a vista.
Yeah. So we were also able to capture some pictures from the View School project. 2 weeks ago, the modulars were moved out. This is the tractor trailer hooking up. This is them swinging it over our existing modulars as well. It's quite amazing how they just pick it up and swing it around to get it on the truck. And that's the last slide, I think. So that's our update for Measure S facilities. Do I have any questions?
We'll start with Maggie. I'll go to Stephen. We'll go to Doug.
No questions. It's super cool. Paula, thank you for continuing to put these all together. I think these pictorials are a great way to show everything that's going on. So they're super awesome. Please continue them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Barb? Yeah, I totally agree, Doug. And I wanted, thank you to the team that continues to work on site every day. Thank you to Nancy, and thank you to Nathan and Ella, and thank you to the Erickson Hall team they're really just working so hard. And we really appreciate all the updates and constant attention. And the other thing I wanted to let the board know is that we did ask them that we'll get the, in November, we're going to look again at a presentation. Isn't this correct, Dr. Johnson and Paula? That kind of that recaps from where we were last November with the bond money, with the amount of money that we have to spend, what we're going to see as a school site, and what we're going to get for the money, and if what we have left at the current North School site, what we're putting over to view, and what we would or would not have left to do any renovation at Valley. So we should be hearing that in November, and then getting the actual bid in December. Yes, Maggie.
Just a clarification. I haven't looked at the floor plans of the North site in a while, but I was under the impression that that top corner was library and student space, not administration. Administration was on the first floor. Minor detail, but just clarifying if there was a change in how we did layout.
I would have to go back and look at that. They told me that it was the principal's office, so I will find out.
I actually thought it was
Initially it was student space.
yeah, I thought it was the superintendent's office, so I said proceed immediately and construct. No, we'll follow up on that and get clarification.
Thanks for the question, Maggie. All right, let's, any other questions for Paula on that presentation? Okay, well, let's continue to move. Let's move on to consent. Do I have a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar? Thank you, Doug. And do I have a second? Thank you, Stephen. All in favor? Michelle, could you do the roll for us, please?
Yes, Maggie Bove-LaMonica,
Aye.
Member Douglas Gardner,
Aye.
Member Zonderos,
Aye.
Clerk McCall,
Aye.
President Cole.
Aye.
All in favor, the consent calendar is passed.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. Now we'll move on to board action. And this is maybe the longest title of a board action item we have ever had, but I'm going to read it. We're going through business. B-23-20/21 resolution number 04:20/21. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Hermosa Beach City School District authorizing the issuance of the Hermosa Beach City School District LA County election of the 2016 General Obligation Bond Series C pursuant to certain provisions of the Government Code in a principal amount not to exceed $11 million and approving certain other matters related thereto. You're welcome. Ms. Fontablo.
Thank you. This evening, we have John Isom from Isom Advisors here to give you a brief presentation before we go to the approval of the bonds. John?
Welcome.
Okay. Good evening, everybody.
Good
Can everyone
evening.
hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So it's good to be with you this evening. This is really an update of your Measure S bond program. If you recall, last year we sold the Series B from the bonds. This would actually conclude the authorization as approved by voters. So this is a really brief presentation. I'm going to take you through it real quick, bring you up to speed, and then I'll just touch on a couple of the highlights as far as the action item in front of you. So next slide, please. So by way of background, so $59 million, that was what was authorized by voters. Of course, it was to improve the schools within the district, new construction, as well as renovation and modernization. The tax rate estimate to voters was $29.50 per 100,000 of assessed value. What you see in that red table there is what the original bond sale in 2016, 2018, 2021. And that all assumed, look at the footnote there, AV growth of 3.24% and 30-year bonds and a $29.50 tax rate. Now, what happens when you sell these bonds is that we don't get to control what happens to actual assessed values. We don't get to control what happens to actual interest rates. So we project something conservatively with the hope and expectation that we can exceed projections. And ultimately, that's what happened here. You can see on the fourth bullet point, some of the components that go into any bond program are those variables, some of which we have control over, most of them we don't. We are capped at a $30 tax rate legally. We have a $29.50 political. You're limited to whatever your tax base can do and whatever your assessed value has been doing. And the term, while we could go to 40 years, you're going to be somewhat limited on term as well. So we don't have a lot of things to play with except interest rates and assessed value growth. And that's what I'm going to touch on in the next couple of slides. But ultimately, the punchline is we can sell these bonds sooner. We can lock in even lower interest rates. We can save taxpayers quite a bit of money. Just as a homeowner who's able to get a 2.5% loan today, for the same amount, if at 4%, they're going to be paying a heck of a lot more in interest. That's what we're looking at here. Not to mention the benefit of getting these dollars sooner. Next slide, please. So I talked about assessed value, one of those components that we don't have an impact on your bond program. And the table to the right shows you what assessed value, actual assessed value has done. Again, we had projected 3.25. You can see the last several years. Let's just take the last 5 years. You were at 8.29, 7.4, 6.5, 5.9, 5.9 again. So you've far exceeded what the original projections were. That means that, again, the district is in a position to access those dollars sooner. I do want to draw your attention to the third bullet point, because there is a calculation that goes into these bond programs, and that's called bonding capacity. And it's a simple calculation. It's your assessed value per percent. And in that scenario, that gives you your gross bonding capacity is $105 million. And then we look at our net, because we do have bonds outstanding, and that's this third bullet point here, of about 50.5 million in outstanding bonds, leaves us with a net of 55.2. All that simply means is, even though you only have $11 million in bonds that could be sold, we're nowhere near our debt limit. If for whatever reason the district needed or wanted to go back to voters in the future, after an $11 million bond sale, you'd have about 44 million in capacity. But it's really not an issue here other than to bring that to your attention. Most importantly, again, ahead of schedule. Last bullet, we've grown at 5.73% versus the 3.24%. And then again, interest rates have never been lower. So this is just a fantastic opportunity. Next slide, please. I laugh every time because, the last time rates were this low was never, but the last time rates were really, really, really low was 2016, the summer of. You can see on this chart here, where there was quite a bit of a valley there in July 2016. That was when Brexit happened, when everybody thought the sky would fall and the European Union would collapse and the end was nigh, because Brexit was voted upon, and all of a sudden interest rates went down because there was pandemonium in the marketplace and a lot of emotion about, oh, what does this all mean? That pales in comparison to where we are now with, frankly, COVID-19 and this pandemic. You can see we're at the lowest of it in history, 2.02% in the most recent figures of August 2020. I did want to give you some context about where rates were when we sold Series A and Series B. Series A, below average. It was quite a bit below average before this recent drop, but still below average for Series A. And our big sale of Series B in 23 million. Last year, we were at 2.59%. So we had a pretty fantastic pricing last year, but we are in a position to have, obviously, a phenomenal pricing now. Next slide, please. Just timing. That's just to kind of close here and talk about kind of the next steps. What goes into these bond sales, if you recall, there's really three components. There's kind of the legal preparation. There is the getting the bonds ready for sale, and then there's the bond sale itself. So right now, with what you have in front of you this evening is part of the legal preparation. There are resolutions, preliminary official statement, and other legal documents that are in draft form for your consideration and approval. What ultimately you approve is the resolution, and then these other draft form documents. Why draft form? What does draft form mean? Draft form simply means that it's 99% complete or it's 95% complete. There's going to be some blanks before it can be finalized, and those blanks aren't completed until the pricing is actually done. So what we're saying as a board, or what you would be saying as a board, is the resolution's 100% complete. We're approving the resolution. We're deputizing the admin team and the finance team to get this thing done on our behalf. and to fill out those form documents and complete those on our behalf. So that's what you have in front of you. The resolution authorizes, provides direction to the county to collect taxes on your behalf, to hold your money, to invest your money, and also, again, kind of deputizes the admin team and the finance team to go ahead and take the next couple of steps, which would be getting the bonds ready for sale, which entails getting a credit rating presentation where the district essentially makes its pitch and says, hey, look at me. I'm a very strong credit. I've got fantastic wealth levels as a community. My tax base is growing. It's huge. My finances are great. I have a well-run district, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then S&P score, just like we all have credit scores. And that credit score, the better our credit score is, the cheaper it is to borrow money. We're already a fantastic AA district by S&P. I wouldn't expect that to change. Bonds prepped in that regard. The Board of Supervisors approves their bonds, and we post the POS and what's called a notice of intent to sell. And that simply says all banks, all underwriters that are interested in buying California general obligation bonds from a fantastic credit, line up and give us your best price. And we do what's called a competitive sale. That would be sometime in mid-October. Interest rate wins. There's a calculation called true interest cost that is taken upon the different underwriters, and they put in their bids within the parameters that we've established. And then whoever has the lowest overall cost of borrowing is awarded the bonds. You get the 11 million, in October 28th, and then that underwriter, they may choose to hold your bonds in their own inventory and keep it as an investment, or they may elect to sell it to, different smaller investors. That's their prerogative. We don't care. They've given us the money and we give them the bonds. And so the district would have these funds on hand on October 28th to kind of keep your projects rolling. Happy to take any questions if you guys have any.
Sorry, Barb, do you have any questions? Yeah, go for it.
Just that October 28th, is that a pretty solid date? Because it's getting really close to November 3rd.
Yeah.
And I think business needs to be taken care of prior to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the real business is on October 14th. So great question, Barbara. The reason we are doing this timeline the way that we've scheduled it is it's our preference not to price after the election or close to it. Strange things happen on presidential elections, and that table or chart a few slides back about interest rates, you can actually look and say, oh, there's some certain movement here. We don't want movement, and I hate to say let's keep hoping for bad news, but bad news is good for the bond market. It means interest rates are low, investors are nervous, they don't want their money in stocks, they do want it in safety. And you guys and other school bonds are as safe as an investment that we can get. So so that's why we've got this scheduled. So the lock-in is on the 14th. The 28th is just, that's just the formality, if you will. It just gives us 2 weeks to read all the legal documents and make sure everything's lined up. But the pricing, the lock-in would be on October 14th.
Thank you, John, for that clarity. Barb, any other questions? Great. Doug?
No questions. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, let's get this thing moving.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. Stephen?
No, it's great. It's exciting to hear the words phenomenal. What might be ballpark sort of saving to the city of sort of doing, is the numbers are calculated?
It's an estimate. So when we went to the voters and put it in front of them, we said, hey, here's the tax rate. Here's, what we're selling, 59 million. We estimate it'll, in total would cost 120 million, maybe principal and interest. We give them in that estimate. I'm going to say we will probably be, in the, $20 million plus savings.
Wow.
And I use the term savings loosely because it's, you know, we projected this is what it would be, and we're coming in a lot lower. So I don't know if that is technically savings. I guess it's a savings in the most simplistic calculus, but I don't feel like it's a savings as much as if you did a refunding, for example, and you were committed to paying these and then it came in less. This is still a, you know, a really nice positive for the taxpayers, and one I think that we should celebrate and do press release and that sort of thing, because it is a lot lower than voters thought they were going to pay.
Right.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. A bit of financial good news. Maggie.
No questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. And thanks, John, and your team for putting this together. We appreciate it. And we will now take I don't have any questions. So you did a great job explaining it. And thank you for giving us this timeline. It really helps to understand how the process works. So without any further ado, can we get a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Looks like
So
Doug
moved.
motioned. I'd second.
Thanks. Sorry, I just can't see who's on the screen right now. Thanks, Doug for motioning and Maggie for seconding. And Michelle, can you do the roll call for us?
Member Bove-LaMonica,
Aye.
Member Gardner,
Aye.
Members Ondiros,
Aye.
Clerk McCall,
Aye.
President Cole.
Aye.
That is unanimous vote to approve resolution number 4/20/2021, resolution of the Board of Education of Hermosa Beach City School District authorizing the issuance of the Hermosa Beach City School District, Los Angeles County, California, election of 2016 general obligation bonds, Series C, pursuant to certain provisions of the Government Code, in a principal amount not to exceed $11 million, and approving certain other matters related thereto. Motion passes.
Thank you, Michelle.
Signing off, guys. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, John. We appreciate it. Moving on to B-24-20/21, approval to extend the term of the agreement for construction services for the new construction at North School, project number 007.
Board President Cole, may I interject for just one moment?
Yeah.
Just to follow up, we did confirm that the second floor corner is slated to be a library learning lab.
Thank you for that.
My office will no longer be there. It's on the first floor. Thank you, Maggie, for clarifying that.
All right, so sorry, no problem. Thank you for the clarification. We're going to move on to B-24-20/21. Ms. Montalvo.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the extension of the term of the agreements for the North School project for the new construction project 007 from December 15th, 2020 to substantial completion on February 4th, 2021 and final completion on February 17th, 2021. Due to various mitigation measures as set forth by the California Coastal Commission prior to the commencement of construction, there were several things that needed to be completed for the Coastal Commission, which delayed the beginning of construction at the very beginning, and several other unforeseen circumstances, which include the ACM and transite asbestos pipes discovery, the east wall shoring, which took additional time, as well as COVID-19 discovered. It is necessary to extend the schedule as indicated in Erickson Hall's revised schedule, Exhibit C-2 through February 17th, 2021. Fiscal implications: the schedule extension is a non-compensational delay and will not affect the guaranteed maximum price of North School Project 007, totaling $24,470,398. So it's merely a scheduled change for completion.
Thank you for that, Paula. Maggie, do you have any questions? Barb? Stephen? Doug? Nope, I don't either. And thank you, Paula, for clarifying what the various mitigation measures were that caused the change in schedule. So I appreciate that attention. All right, so with no further questions, can we move to motion to approve? Thank you, Doug. Can I get a second? Thank you, Stephen. All in favor, Michelle?
Member Bove LaMonica? She is indicating aye. Member Gardner?
Aye.
Member Zonderos?
Aye.
Clerk McCall?
Aye.
President Cole?
Aye.
All in favor approval to extend the term of the agreement for construction services for the new construction at North School, Project 007 is approved and the motion passes.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the last bit of our agenda tonight, B-25-20/21, the 2019-2020 unaudited actuals. Ms. Montalvo.
Thank you. So we're here this evening to take a look at the unaudited actuals, which is a financial report for all transactions for the fiscal year 2019-20. Next slide, Michelle. Go ahead, next slide. So we'll just take a quick look at, we look at this every time our budget and accounting cycle. We're here at the unaudited actuals in September. We'll move to first interim in December. And the auditors will actually be either working remotely or come to the district office, I'm not sure, in October to begin planning or closing of the books, the audited actuals. Next slide. When we're looking at our general fund revenues, our total revenue is $13.8 million. 77% of that is our LCFF funding, which is at $10.6 million for our LCFF funding. We have 14% in our local fund revenues, which includes Hermosa Beach Education Foundation, Hermosa View and Valley PPO, Beach Cities Health District, miscellaneous revenues to include the extended daycare program, as well as rentals and leases of facilities at primarily at Hermosa Valley School, and also some ASCIP workman's compensation rebates. In addition, we get 8% for state revenues and 2% for federal. Next slide. We're taking a look at our general fund expenditures. Our total expenditures are $13.2 million. 87% of that money is spent on salaries and benefits, or $11.6 million. So I just told you that our LCFF funding is $10.6 million for this year, and we're spending $11.6 million on salaries and benefits for classified and certificated salaries. So there continues to be about a $1 million delta between our base grant, our LCFF funding, and our expenditures for salaries and benefits. We are at 4% for books and supplies, 7% for other operating expenditures, and 1% for capital outlay and other out. Next slide, Michelle. So we want to take a closer look at our revenues, and we'll start with our LCFF funding. As I mentioned, we're going to be receiving $10.6 million, which is a decline. There is a $200,000 deferral. If you remember, in the governor's, in the adopted budget for the plan for this year, our first deferral was from June to July. So $200,000 of this year's revenue is being deferred and will be recognized in 2021. That's the first thing. Our federal income is $272,000, which shows about a $14,000 increase. Our state revenue is a little over $1 million. Our local is $1.8 million. Again, I want to call out that the largest majority of this money, over $1 million, is from the Hermosa Beach Education Foundation and the community at large that helps support their fundraising events. HVPTO also contributes, Beach City also contributes. I did want to point out to you that there was a $42,000 loss in rentals and lease properties this year due to COVID. When COVID hit, we closed all our facilities and quit leasing and renting out our campuses. So we lost $42,000 in planned revenue for that. We had some unexpected revenue from ASCIP on our workman's compensation a rebate that they gave us, so that's reflected in this local revenue as well, bringing our total revenue to $13.8 million. When we take a look at our expenditures, our certificated salaries came in at $6.7 million, which reflects a decrease of about $200,000, and that's primarily due to sub savings and programs that we're not able to run, like the low performing block grant. Some intervention classes that have been planned didn't take place in the late spring. Classified salaries, we had a planned increase. So our classified salaries ran as $2.2 million, and that planned increase was about $70,000 for additional extended daycare staff that we talked about, and we changed the staffing ratios to be in compliance with state requirements. So that's the extra $70,000 covered that. Employee benefits as well decreased, which is in step with the certificated decrease, as well as the increase for classified salaries of about $250,000. For books and supplies, we spent about $480,000, which does reflect a $24,000 increase, which is primarily due to, if you remember at first interim, the auditor suggested that we take our one-time technology money that was in capital outlay and move it to books and supplies because our purchases are less than $5,000. It's not a capitalized expense. So I moved those expenditures into books and supplies. Our service and other operating expenditures, we spent $934,000. There is a significant decrease in this area. The district did receive a $290,000 release of legal liability. So that money was credited back into legal. So there's a $290,000 credit. In addition to that, there was some planned savings in the spring, late March, when COVID hit. The district as a whole made a plan to spend less money, to spend money only on essential items in order to save money for future years. So the most savings was in this category. So we had significant savings in our regular contracted services, as well as utilities, repairs, our special education, transportation, as well as professional development, and also some savings to LACO for the BEST project was also put on hold. So we did not have to pay any fees for that while it was on hold. Our capital outlay represents the last phase of our Prop 39 lighting project of $141,000. Our other outgo of $67,000 is for our excess costs for our SELPA for our special education students, bringing our total expenditures to $13.2 million, leaving us with an excess of revenues of $577,000. The next line is contribution, which reflects our legal responsibility to make contributions to the routine maintenance account, as well as the special education for our special education students. Again, leaving us with a net increase in fund balance of $577,000. Next slide, Michelle. Our ending reserve balance on June 30, 2020 is $4.4 million. Assignments within that reserve, 5% are restricted, 2% is for unused vacation, 31% is for our GASB 75 for our other post-employment benefits, as well as 1% for unrestricted lottery, leaving the balance of 52% for our reserve for economic uncertainties. Next slide. So when we take a look at our beginning fund balance on July 1st, 2019, it was $3.9 million. As you'll recall, at our audit report in January, we had an audit adjustment of $56,000, leaving us with an adjusted fund balance of $3.8 million. And our ending fund balance with the $577,000 increase leaves us with $4.4 million as our ending fund balance. Now, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we do have assignments within those reserves that are restricted for specific purposes. Revolving cash of $500, restricted $235,000, which includes instructional materials, mental health, classified PD, our SB 117 money from the state for PPEs, our low performing block grant, and there's some miscellaneous routine maintenance money in that as well. Unrestricted lottery in the amount of $26,000, our GASB 75 of $1.3 million, which has increased over last year's assignment about $104,000. Last year it was 1.258. Our uncompensated vacations are at $88,000. Again, leaving us with a reserve for economic uncertainties of $2.7 million, which reflects about a 20% reserve. Next slide. Statewide averages as of 2018-19 was the latest data that I could find for elementary school districts. The average reserve was 20.47. So we're falling pretty close to what the average was in 18-19, which is good news. Next slide. Local agencies, as ourselves, we are going to need our reserves to protect students, employees, and the public. With the current pandemic-driven recession and the cuts that LEIs are facing this year and next year and the following year, our reserves are going to help us see us through. Next slide. In California, it's already been brought to our attention that our state tax revenues are very volatile. We don't know what our state tax revenues are. That information still has not been released. And we know that state tax revenues affect our funding to the local LEAs through the LCFF funding formula. So the more reserves we have, the better position we are to continue to serve our community. And our specific circumstances of the gamut of all of these things that are on the screen, declining enrollment, labor unrest, history of deficit spending, our biggest challenge is going to be declining enrollment. As Ms. Gluck mentioned, we have a 10% decrease in enrollment. So if you take a look at in 2019, as she mentioned, we had 1,352 students. Currently, we have 1,209. That's a decline of 143 students. And as she mentioned, that's a 10% decrease. If you take what we're receiving per student of about $8,200 as a rough ballpark of 143 students, that's $1.1 million off the top. So we will need our reserves to move forward. Next slide. Our other fund ending balances are running consistent with the adopted budget. Next slide, Michelle. And to wrap things up, our next steps would be for the board to approve the unaudited actuals and to submit them to the county office by the 15th, and then to begin to prepare for the first interim report in December 2020. Any questions?
Thank you, Paula. We'll start with Stephen. Any questions?
known unknowns. When are we, any timing on when state, any next milestones or key updates or any updates?
So they've indicated that the next update that, as I am aware of, will be in January of the governor's proposed budget.
No other questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephen. Maggie?
Yes. Can you hear me now? Everybody nodded. That was great. Thinking of a Queen song. Okay. In terms of the federal government not passing a second follow-up to CARES, I think it was going to be HEROES or whatever it is, how does that impact then the state's projection on deferrals? Because I thought the legislature was counting on the spring deferrals with the federal money being passed in that second round. Is that accurate, Paula?
So as I understand it, if there was an additional round of funding, if the HEROES Act had been passed in any capacity, the amount of deferrals could be cut. But if it's not, if there's no second funding model, deferrals will move forward as already indicated. So we'd have deferrals in February, March, April, May, and then June to the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I think we lost you.
So the current schedule is accurate right now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Doug, do you have any questions?
No questions. I just wanted to thank Paula for the detail, particularly on the slide, looking at the actuals, the breakdown, and where some of the differences were between the budget, because the bottom number is a substantial swing from what we had approved in the budget. But I appreciate getting a better understanding of the different items that contributed to that, and particularly the larger ones, the legal piece that you mentioned being a particularly big piece, as well as the budgetary prudence that the district took starting in the spring that I know continues as well. So I just wanted to thank you for the additional detail, and as always, a great job. So.
Thank you.
And Barb?
Nothing. Thank you, as always.
Thanks. And Stephen, did I get you the first time? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then Paula, I don't have any questions either. That was Doug. I did what Doug said, because one of my questions was, where did that all come from? That extra it feels like a windfall. But you did a great job explaining that where it came from, and that it actually is good, but it is not a windfall as we look at declining enrollment. So, but thank you for putting it together kind of so plain, like kind of really easy to follow. I always feel like it's pretty easy to follow when you present. So thank you so much. And with that, anybody else, any other questions? So let's do the, can I get a motion to approve? Thank you, Barb. Can I get a second? Thank you, Doug. And Michelle, can you do the roll call, please?
Member Bove LaMonica?
She said aye.
Member Gardner?
Aye.
Member Zondiros?
Aye.
Clerk McCall?
Aye.
President Cole?
Aye.
All in favor. The 2019-2020 unaudited actuals is approved and the motion passes.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thanks again, Paula. And with that, we will go to board member roundtable. We'll start with Barb.
Just congratulations to everyone on a great start to the school year, and overcoming all these challenges.
Thank you, Barb. Go to Stephen.
Yes, I think we all echo that. The school spirit has been brilliant, and it's hard that connecting together apart. but it's off to a great start, and everything from Principal Scott's, new Instagram and sharing the love, like it's really good. So a lot of work's gone in, so thank you. It's exciting. Thank you very much for the broadcast. It's probably nice that people can actually see us
And hear us.
and hear
That's
us.
a little thing. Yeah.
Which is the small things in life that are big. So it's pretty exciting to be on the Book of Face. And it may be a question, President Cole, just updates around, or just we've got our governance workshop coming up shortly. So that the date on that and the format and whatever. I don't know if we want to touch, if you'll talk to that in your update, I assume, or
sure,
or that, and then state of the schools as well. Because actually, is that planned for October, probably coming up as well after that.
Yep, that's on our governance.
Lots
calendar.
of things. Got it. Cool. So if you're, that would be brilliant. I think. Sure. I feel I do need to, because more just also for the board, but a sort of a thank you, not that probably people are watching on Facebook at this time, but, on the equity piece, I also wanted to say thank you to Tara, South Bay Cares. I've spoken with her as part of my outreach. I also spoke with Lisa at Pop the Bubble, Lindsay Fox. I've spoken, these groups, there's anti-racist movements arms around the South Bay, and Trish Valdez was fantastic. The Community Panel for Equity, Ronald Clinton and his committee, doing tremendous work and laying sort of real great engagement for Manhattan Beach, but also Hermosa Beach because of the students and the alumni there. I had previously had conversations with Kristen Zaleski, who's a clinical associate professor at USC, and Beach Cities Health District, Ali Stewart and Vish on the board. So, I think that, just it's heartwarming to know, these are difficult conversations, and there's complications, and it's lots to be done. But I just wanted to thank those people because I had great conversations with them, got lots of great input. So as and when the task force is ready and whatever else, I'm excited to sort of input on that. And as well as our partners separately now, just back to that school spirit, HVPTO, all their support, but HBEF, I know that they just published their latest annual report, their welcome back video, and it's going to be, it's great seeing the support there and everything that their leadership is putting into things. So I just wanted to say thank you for their input and collaboration. Last, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit here, was the Pop the Bubble inclusive classroom books. I also wanted to sort of, I know with Lisa, I had been helpful in sort of connecting and introductions and whatever else. So I just wanted the board to let the board know that I've, because they're sort of forging their communications with us. And so I know that the district plans to get more communications out around that, because it's through the month of September. I was also in touch with the PTO, and they're going to support it in their SURF reports and other communications. So as much as we are all willing to support it through our own channels and other things, we've had a busy week last week, what with back to school and things. So, but it's nice to spotlight, it's important to spotlight something like that that's going to benefit our district. So I just wanted to talk to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Maggie?
Wanted just to, again, do a great shout out to the teachers and the families for a start of school. Really excited to see everybody online. I've been driving around and just happy to see like a bunch of kids in garages hooked up to laptops with like weird, stuff like to get them ready for school. So thank you to all the families who are trying to make this year work under such unusual circumstances.
Thanks, Maggie. To follow up on Stephen's question about the board governance workshop, it is going to be on the 17th of September. It'll be a Zoom as well. We are having it moderated by Dawn Brand, Jen Hahn, and I think Steve Wallace, who helped us initially in January. My understanding is that we're putting the board is putting, the moderators are putting together the agenda based off of input from different board members and from Dr. Johnson, and that we have an ambitious agenda, but with hope that we can review the board, review and probably have a work in progress on the board governance compact that we have looked at, and set out some goals and review the goals that we had made in January, and kind of incorporate those with Dr. Johnson's 60-day goals as well. So it's an ambitious agenda. The public is, of course, welcome to join us. It's a special session. That's you want to add any more to that, Dr. Johnson?
No, you totally encompassed it.
Okay. And then State of the Schools, I know it's on our governance calendar, but we have not scheduled it yet, but we will get that on the schedule. And that is all I have tonight. And with that, oh, thank you. Oh, sorry, Doug. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
No problem. Just two quick things. I'll make it short because I know it's getting late. I want to echo everybody's sentiments to thank you for the teachers, all the families. It has been a really, considering what is going on, a really fantastic start to school. And everybody's done a really tremendous job. The administration, teachers, PTO, HBF, families, students, getting everybody on board the first week, first week in the books. It's been really good. My family has been really pleased with how everything has been going so far. So I wanted to say a thank you. Secondly, and finally, just a reminder, because Laco sent an email about this today, about the census. If you've not done your census, please make sure to do that. The deadline is coming up at the end of the month. So please make sure you fill that out. That will impact all kinds of things that we're talking about budgetarily, not just for schools, but state and local resources as well, to make sure that you and your family are counted towards the census. It's quick and easy, so please make sure that you're doing that as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder, Doug. It is very short, very, very short to do. So, okay, well, with that, we will do an adjournment for the evening. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please? Thank you, Doug. Can I get a second? Thank you, Stephen. All in favor? Michelle, can you do the honors?
Member Bove LaMonica?
Aye.
Member Gardner?
Aye.
Member Zonderos?
Aye.
Clerk McCall?
Aye.
President Cole?
Aye.
All in favor? We are adjourned.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.